Oh wait, here we go. We're good.
Did we do a nat everyone just to drum up some numbers?
Yeah, of course. All right, we are live again with another Pangburn Hangout. Today we're talking about critical race theory. What is it? How would you describe it? Do you think it's useful? Do you think it's useless? We're going to get into that today, but first I want to start with what everyone thinks some aspects of critical race theory are. Um, Jimmy, do you have some thoughts to get us started?
um, sure. I was just reading a paper here on it, just to catch myself up, just to get some specifics, just because I think it's just such a broad topic. The paper I'm reading specifically was talking about schooling and the different graduation rates between um, white people and colored people, and how critical race theory seeks to close that gap. Um, I think that's a worthy goal. I don't know if critical race theory is the way to go about that. Um, I think that's the responsibility of, say, the parents, not maybe the whole idea of the structure the society of our structure being lived in being um, necessarily racist or colorblind, or however a critical race theorist would suggest that it is, that it's all based upon all the privilege going to um, a white society.
Anyone have any thoughts on what Jimmy had to say? So yeah, and I will read a little bit from Britannica here. Critical race theory (CRT), intellectual movement and loosely organized framework of legal analysis based on the premise that race is not a natural, biologically grounded feature of uh, physically distinct subgroups of human beings, but a socially constructed quote or bracket culturally invented category that is used to oppress and exploit people of color. Critical race theorists hold that the law and legal institutions in the United States are inherently racist insofar as they function to create and maintain social, economic, and political inequalities between whites and non-whites, especially African Americans. So, insofar as they function to create and maintain social, economic, and political inequalities between, yeah. So I don't think that's happening in the United States. Uh, law and legal institutions uh, functioning in a way to create and maintain social, economic, and political inequalities between whites and non-whites, especially African Americans. So I don't believe that's happening in the United States in law and legal. Does anyone think that is happening?
So you don't think that black people have a legislated advantage? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think there is as it writes here. Law and legal institutions in the United States are inherently racist insofar as they function to create and maintain social inequalities. So I don't see the law and legal system fighting to maintain social and economic and political inequalities between whites and non-whites,
Well, sure they are,
as it's
Travis.
outlined here in critical race theory.
Sure, the government is trying, and the liberals are trying to keep the family unit of the black community destroyed and separated so they can take advantage of them.
And how and
What
where in the
evidence?
law do you see that this is the prescription from lawmakers that they're working to do this?
How would you say it's the liberals and not conservatives that were doing it?
Because it's the liberals that fund destroying the families. the ridiculous, lack of responsibility.
Okay, so
And
are you saying, Tom, that it's tilted in a way where it's like white people are being targeted?
no, black people are being targeted.
Okay,
They're trying to
are you
they're
saying
trying to go into their
are you saying black people are being targeted by people to keep to keep them let's say keep the poor blacks poor?
that's what it looks like.
Yeah,
And
he
you would
just
say
saying
the
it's being
liberals-
done by liberals and
Right.
not conservatives.
Right.
Is it really that big a deal? Who's it done by?
Okay,
Exactly.
so that's one take by Tom. Let's go through this last part again. Critical race theorists hold that the law and legal institutions in the United States are inherently racist insofar as they function to create and maintain social, economic, and political inequalities between whites and non-whites, especially African Americans. So I would say I don't think. So the law, it says they hold that the law and legal institutions in the United States are inherently racist insofar as they function. Okay, so it is making a positive claim about the function. So I just think that claim has not been substantiated and hasn't been proven. And I've read a lot of documents where people try to point and say, okay, this law is racist because it happens to affect let's say black communities more than white communities, but that is not racism, right? As far as
economic standing.
Yeah, like the outcome, of course, someone could say that outcome does affect one race more than the other. But if it was the other way around and say, that a law came out that you couldn't wear socks with sandals anymore, obviously that's going to affect white people more than anyone. And I wouldn't say
That's a
that,
racist trope.
and I wouldn't say that is racist just because the rule would be the same for anyone wearing socks and sandals, right? Even if the government said we're not doing this anymore and it happened to affect mostly white people, I wouldn't say it was racist. I may say it's unfair to mostly white people out there, but it's not racism. Like it's not saying we are going to create this law because we want the white race to stop wearing socks and sandals. The law is saying we don't want to see socks and sandals at all, and across all races. So, anyone got anything on that?
Can I
Yeah, and
ask?
I think that's where the point comes down to, is the argument that's being made is that it has an outsized effect on people who are, minorities who are dealing with the brunt of these things. But I do think that's probably closer to in line with what's actually going on. Is it's more along the lines of laws that are written to say, okay, if it's these people who make this amount of money, or they can use certain standards like that. So think about things like paycheck lending, or where it's as highly I don't know what's the word.
Yeah, so
it's like an industry that takes advantage of people.
So the
but
argument,
it's taking advantage of poor people.
right? But that would be taking advantage of poor people regardless of the race, right?
Exactly.
So that's where I
Yeah.
say I think the fundamental split in this whole conversation is, whether creating a law that has no racial underpinnings, it's just a law for everyone that everyone must follow. And if it happens to affect one race more than the other, or predominantly one race over the other, we're going to call that racist. That seems like a misuse of how racism, how we understand racism to be a conscious, targeted. Blacks will not drink from this fountain. Only whites are going to be drinking from this fountain. There's a systemically racist law. There's a racist law. right?
So the only issue that I have with this is if you guys have ever heard the Lee Atwater tape from like 1980s, basically what he's going off of, and you can pull this up, and he's like, we can't say the N word, we can't do this, that, and that, but what we can do is we can talk about people on welfare. So like he sort of laid it out pretty clear on the tactics that they were going to try to use, been like, okay, so we know
Yeah.
we can't necessarily
The
say
things you
this
used to
thing's
do and say, you
racist,
can't do those
but we
things.
can. Well, it's like we were talking about the other day. It's like the way like a mob works. A mob will be like, "Hey, man, go ahead and take care of Tony." But
Yeah.
people who are in the know what take care means.
So,
but you can't
yeah.
you can't prove it, and that's
So that
and
might be what
it's rough.
Lee Atwater had to say, but do you think
Yeah.
like do you see people subscribing to that still?
Not the majority. I do think there are people who do fall into that group, but not the majority, and certainly not people who are
and it's true. Look,
lawyers or judges or
people
congressmen.
get away with crime all the time, and
Exactly.
if there's a racially targeted crime, we try to catch them. We have a system set up in the West in order to suss out these people, right? And we have strong penalties if you get busted. And just like if you're engaging in tax evasion, if you're engaging in some level of fraud, if you're engaging in assault, these things, we penalize it. We tell you are not going to racially segregate your fucking theater. Like we tell people you cannot do that. Our society under this law, you will not do that. And then a lot of people paint this picture like the United States and Canada and other places are like, they're okay doing that as long as no one sees it. And I think that claim is unsubstantiated, unfounded in what the legal system is comprised of today. I think it's ghost chasing. Yeah. I think it's just another step of this game. We're thinking that there's a racist behind every door. And I don't think there are many true racists left out there. I'm not talking about your grandma who might say a racist slur. I don't necessarily think that makes her a racist. It's more like people actively trying to lobby and pull people into their groups to try to keep the black man down and keep the white man up. I think the amount of those people are just dying off very quickly. It's hard for them to even gather enough people to get 100 views on their BitChute account. It's a dying ideology, right?
Yeah,
So,
I would say like overall for the United States and like for Canada, for like federal government, that's totally true. But at the same time, there might be certain counties in like Mississippi and Alabama where that might not necessarily be true. But that goes to point like how many counties are there in the United States? So yeah, I mean it's not like it's everywhere that this kind of stuff happens.
But my thing on that is if we find out where those counties are who are doing this,
they do get in trouble.
We fuck them.
Yeah.
We give them the maximum penalty in order to deter any kind of that racist bureaucratic crap again. We target them. We make a big story out of it. Anytime we catch a guy like that.
They are being doing
I think
that.
the last time this argument could have been like legitimized or like used in a legitimate way was probably like 65 to 70 plus years ago. Like I think that the argument that's being made is not, it doesn't hold up today.
Well, I think whatever, I think there will be bad actors in the system, but whatever is in the books, equal laws for everyone needs to be the gold standard that you look back to. Someone's either breaking the law or they are not. And if someone wants to say, well, I think that should be against the law, then you lobby for that and you fight for it. And that has happened a lot since the civil rights movement, right? And so if you do find something like that, but if you can demonstrate where this is happening, not just a conspiracy theory, Scott, you'll say, there might be something in Alabama and, those guys are so good at hiding it. we're not able to necessarily know if they're doing it, but we kind of know they're doing it.
Yeah.
We're kind of getting into conspiratorial line drawing there. So
we're starting to get into it. Like the only thing where I differentiate on with this kind of stuff is politics is one of those things where it's different than saying like, okay, we have evidence that we went to the moon or something like that. You know, like in politics, unfortunately, we don't necessarily have any any complete details or like actual information that we can test other places. So you just sort of have to go off of, you know, things you've kind of seen, you know, and like, you know, in Mississippi, I do think I think there are cases specifically going on right now where like it's like some guy who was like a sheriff's deputy did
Yep.
something,
Yep.
you know, and like and that's a thing. Like
that stuff happens.
yeah, exactly. And like I said, I don't necessarily say it's like this overall overriding systemic thing, but I do think you might find in certain places with certain groups of people and certain sheriff's departments that these things might be taking place.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
think
and I don't
racism.
think
I
that,
think you're going to find instances of racism in many
Yeah.
places, including
Yep.
racism against whites, racism against Asians, racism against blacks. Everyone always
Yep.
goes to racism against blacks because that's like the hot topic. But there's racism against all races, and
Yep.
and I think it's important to not just hunt for the ghosts or for the
Yep.
racists that may be acting poorly
Yep.
of one particular color. Like looking for the white racist seems to be always a hot thing people want to do. But, you know, looking for the black racists, looking for the Asian racists, looking for the brown racists, like we should not discriminate based on race who we do call out on this and say, no, we are no longer going to allow for you to say, you know, sit down, white man, you're not allowed to talk, or sit
Yeah.
down, Asian, you have too many IQ points to have
Yeah.
equal say here. You only get 1 minute to talk instead of 3 minutes.
Well, and I would say like if I found out there is like a police department run by like black Israelites, I would say yeah, there's probably a real big problem there.
Yeah, or even
those guys are legit racist.
well, how about a Black Lives Matter police station that is mandatory all black officers that say we are helping to balance the scale by looking closer in white communities as opposed to black communities, and
Yeah,
that's
then
our
that'd be a
mandate.
problem.
Yeah, if
that'd be
that
a
happened,
problem. Yeah.
amazingly
Well,
enough, there
one
are a
one
lot of
policy which
people
is
who
like
would,
a
oh crap, dude, that
one
was
policy
super
that's
loud.
a oh holy cow!
Oh no, it's me.
Sorry.
It's me. I had you at
Okay.
200% for some reason. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I think it might have been the other day. My microphone was weird,
Yeah, no worries. Go ahead.
and you turned me up. So there's other ways of being racist that are a little bit less innocuous.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like for example, having a policy that the police department makeup of their racial profile has to match the community that they're in.
Mm.
So if you had an all-black community, saying you need an all-black police force would be a little bit more obvious. If you had a community that was 50% white, 25% black, 25% Hispanic, and saying, yeah, you have 55% white, that's too many. That's also racist. Even though,
too many, like if you say,
Right,
yeah,
right,
of
so-
course, if you say we have too many, if you say we have too many whites here, it's the same as saying we have too many blacks here.
right, yeah. So,
Yes.
but like whether it's to make the police force uniformly one color is no different than making it just match the average demographics of the community that they're in. If you're hiring a police officer, they should be hired for their skills, their ability to pass the criminal justice, bachelors that they need to get to be a police officer, the ability to, pass their police training,
Right.
their demeanor, the way that they interact with other people. These are qualifications of police officers that we should be desiring. and if you start with their race, that's, it's the wrong way to think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, even if you're doing it to level the playing field.
Yeah, there's the differences between individuals outweighs the differences we are going to find between races by a fucking long shot. Yeah. So this is why I think this critical race theory thing, bringing more attention to race because people are worried that, and I was reading some of these things people have to say about critical race theory and what it is, but people are worried that there's going to be some racism that goes unchecked in the system. I think there are people who have a hard time with race, and they have a hard time, not being so consciously aware of like, wow, a person with a different race is in my vicinity. Wow. Like it blows their mind. And then they think, wow, because they're different, there must be so many different things about them necessarily. And a lot of people who you'll find on the left side of the political persuasion are going to think that way now, as opposed to this color blind approach. They think the other side, like it's like this false dichotomy. You either have to be really into race and race issues and figuring out where the racists are, or you have to be completely blind to race. Race doesn't exist. I only see Zool. And it's like, you don't have to be either of those things. You can actually not obsess with race. You can notice people's race and be like, hey, it's nice to see we have a black dude here. Like you can notice it, joke about it, be with it. You don't have to be obsessed with it and try to protect it and try to preserve it. Like I speak to a lot of people who are obsessed with the white race. They want to maintain it. They want to keep it alive. But then I speak to black people who feel the same. The white man would like to see us executed and away from these lands. It's like, where are they? Show me where those white guys are. And then you're going to point out Daniel Carver and a few of these turds that want to have their own white state. And they can go buy a piece of property and do that if they want. I think they're allowed in the United States if they own the property. But yeah, I think critical race theory, from what I've read so far, it's just hogwash that wants to try and demonstrate systemic racism and that it's still alive in the United States. And there were some other things. Oh yeah, and claiming that that the law and legal institutions in the United States are inherently racist as they function to create and maintain social, economic, and political inequalities. Well, show me where that's happening, and the law will take care of those people or those bad actors. Done. The law is already tuned to take care of that. But I want to let you go. I wanted to roll a little bit there. I want to hear from you guys, so the floor is open.
Is anybody a lawyer right now in this? Because like that's the thing. Like from what Trav is saying too. Like what I've seen it always pose as is always relating to law, right? Just wondering if somebody has.
Yeah, I think
any experience in actual law with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can pull up some legal precedent if we want to look into that. I don't think we need a lawyer.
Because to me, it seems like that's where, like what I'm looking at right now, everything is always talking about lawmakers and how everything is associated to law.
So people are trying to, teach this critical race theory in schools, right? And I would like to see some examples of how it's being taught. Maybe I'll pull that up next.
Yes, well, that from what I've seen is nobody actually teaches this in middle school or high school or anything. It's stuff that like comes up when people are in like law schools and stuff. I think what you've seen like people complaining about is like teachers being like these kind of things being taught to teachers, and people are like, oh, these teachers are going to indoctrinate our kids in this, that, and the other, and teach them that being white is evil. Like, I think that's just as ridiculous as the other side. I don't think that's really what's going on either. I think both sides are coming at it from their own specific point of view without uh, ever coming together and talking about where they're coming from. So you have one side just been like, oh, this is just evil and it's this and it's that, and they're just pushing this and they're trying to indoctrinate our kids, and the other side's being like, oh, well, they're just evil because they don't want to have this information being given to their kids so their kids can see what's going on. That's what I mean. It's like, to me, it's just so loaded, right? You want to find good, unbiased information that we can go off of.
Do you think both sides are equally valid?
In politics, yeah, both sides are equal.
Right.
Yeah.
So you said, you used the word there. You said that one side is wrong for what they're teaching. Could you explain to me which part of critical race theory is factually incorrect?
No, I'm saying that's what people on the other side are saying. I didn't say that's what I'm saying. I'm saying this is.
But I just asked you right now.
Yeah,
and you said to me that both sides are equally correct, right?
Yeah. So basically, what you'll see when I say both sides are equally correct, you asked, do you think if politics is fucked up, and people, like, the way I took it is that you were asking if I think politicians and the way politics works is.
I was talking about what you were talking about.
Okay, because you just mentioned something that was sort of overarching.
Sorry, no.
Yeah. So just from what I'm reading, and like, honestly, this is something that I just haven't really looked all that much into. From what I'm reading, a lot of, like, the idea of critical race theory is based off of critical theory, which comes from like the 1940s, and then critical race theory just applies race into the logic of critical theory, and it's making the argument that's saying, hey, these laws were passed in a time when there was this high racial bias, and some of these laws haven't been changed, right? I mean, to me, it seems like that's what's going on.
Hey guys, I just want to say quickly, I'm going to be listening, but please engage in the YouTube chat. We're at the Pangburn Offensive on YouTube, and we already got some people engaging there, so please do engage.
Yeah, so then you'll see just the origin of it seems to be something that's purely like academic and strictly targeted towards people in the field of law. And I think people are now taking it, trying to apply it in ways that it doesn't necessarily really apply the way that they think it does. And you'll see people who are pro critical race theory, just from what I've seen on the news, taking some pretty big liberties from what I read it actually means. And so obviously they're going to get criticized, but then you have people on the opposing side that are going to take even just as big a liberties and say, okay, well, what it is it's actually racism against white people, So, like, I mean, obviously those two things are like just because people are fighting heavily for something or heavily against something doesn't mean either side is right. I think the truth most likely comes down to some sort of understanding that people in the middle are going to come to.
But do you agree with the sentiment behind it, in that black people are systemically disenfranchised due to their skin color and due to things like implicit bias and due to their ancestry? Like, do you agree with the sentiment behind it?
The sentiment behind it, but I don't think there are any. I don't know of any specific laws right now that say you can or can't do something based on race. We actually have laws that will go after that. This is something that I brought up to Travis, and I said, I don't necessarily see this as something that's wholly systemic, but you do have, like, specific places that might be like a county here and there where you do have these kind of fucked up things going.
You're aware that systemic issues transcend the law, right?
What's that?
You're aware that systemic issues transcend the law, right? Like just because something's not
Yes.
in the law doesn't mean it's not a systemic issue.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, like, the argument that we generally make is that the law is equal to people of all races, but that doesn't mean that systemic sorry, I'm just ill, yeah. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The law argument doesn't really work here. Because it doesn't...
So where would you say systemic disenfranchisement actually exists right now in the United States?
Well, it takes the form of implicit bias. A recent study done showed that between 18 to 40% of the discrepancies between black and white sentencing could be attributed towards bias on the part of the jury. There's a few other.
It could be, but that's a thing. That's like when you say.
Yeah, but if you go into the I know it could be, but if you go into the academic literature, every single study points to the same conclusion that racial biases exist, and we've got good reason to suppose that they exist because we only came out of segregation like 70 years ago. So it's not like it's not unsensible.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, it's
so that's
really
kind of what we argue about.
at all. But that's the thing. Like, so can somebody be racist without the system being racist?
No, because the system is comprised of individuals.
No.
Yes, because the system is comprised of individuals, and of course, what are you talking about?
So if one person is racist, the entire system is racist.
No, if a sufficient number of them are racist, and the studies show.
What alternate universe exists where nobody in the system is racist? Like, is there some alternate universe that you can imagine where isn't a human being that's racist at all in any way? And if you can't propose how we get to that alternate universe, then you're just you're arguing at the wall because you're not arguing against something that's possible.
Yeah,
I think it's very much possible.
Haven't they done studies?
There are laws that people try to change that
everybody has
target them unfairly.
Well, they've done studies where everybody has a specific level of implicit racial bias, and it's that doesn't mean everybody's racist. It's something that, like, they've done.
They are.
It doesn't mean everyone doesn't have to be racist. By Ziad's theory, everybody has to be not racist in order for society to not be implicitly, whatever he called it, systemically racist. So his your imaginary universe with zero racists in all of society is fucking imaginary. Let's talk about the real world.
Yeah, I don't think it's very possible for everybody to not, for like literally no one to be racist.
So what we can do is make rules, which we call laws, which actually prohibit the discrimination in meaningful ways, such as the Fair Housing Standards Act.
Yeah, unless the laws indiscriminately more target one than the other, right? Like with the election, what you really don't think that's racist when they say you can't vote on Sunday, and they know that blacks get out on. You think that's just a coincidence when they go to church and they get out to drive on to vote on Sunday?
White people go to church on
Sunday. White people go to church on Sunday too. It's really only racist against atheists,
So you shorten the times of electing, and because it's mostly people in cities, it's and people in rural areas that have an easier time with that. But the people in cities, and plus the days, it's on work days. I mean, like, and they move the polling station too far. They'll put a drop box like out. It's just everything is so inconveniently, strategically, coincidentally done, and you're just telling me it's all in people's head. It has nothing to do with targeting people.
Who said that? Political.
Anyways.
All the time. No, I know. I think we all need to acknowledge that political people. We all need to acknowledge that political people target their opponents all the time in order to try to win elections.
Yep,
and if you think that one side's
doing it, now we're acknowledging targeting now.
Yeah, hold on. So we can acknowledge they're targeting people. Think about this.
It's like me telling you something.
Hold on.
Targeting you, and it's all in your head.
Hold on, just real quick. Now,
think about
this. If the majority of black people voted for Republicans, do you think they would have passed that law?
Probably. Wait, what did you say?
So if the majority of black people voted Republican, do you think they would have passed the law that limited voting on Sundays? Because basically they're attacking.
I don't know, because I don't know.
See, and
Look,
that's the
none of us.
thing.
Look, none of us. Listen.
Of course, they wouldn't have, because
Look, no.
when you look at politics, what politicians care about is getting votes, and so
Absolutely.
and that's the thing. Like, so you can see things like this, and you can see it's going to have an outside effect on black people.
But you're forgetting that
my
Republicans used to
point
be
is, hold
Democrats,
on,
right?
just
And then
let me
they.
fucking finish my point, man. What I'm trying to say is that if all of a sudden black people voted the majority for Republicans wouldn't have passed that law, and it probably would have been Democrats passing. And it has nothing to do with race. It has more to do with like Republicans and Democrats rat fucking each other all the time. You know, I mean, that's just what they do. Am I wrong in that?
Well,
So when
yeah,
when
because
civil
part
rights was
knows.
acknowledged and people left from the Democratic Party Republican, that had nothing to do with
Yeah,
race.
exactly, and it could change again in the future, and then you're going to see laws like that change again, right?
How
I
do you
can
know the
guarantee you,
motivation of
if
the
they
one
pass
passing the
laws
law?
like that, they'll switch back from the Republicans to the Democrats again. That's what would happen.
Yeah, of course, yeah,
So
that's the way it
okay.
works, dude. Like, yeah, I mean, people are not monoliths, you know. It's not like black people are always going to be Republicans, or always going to be Democrats, or always going to be libertarians. Like, that's just not the way.
Yeah. Black
When
people
I'll,
are
Because
pretty
and
conservative.
I'll tell you right
Why do you
now,
think
Nivek,
they're Republicans?
those kind of laws that they pass, I think are completely cynical and antithetical to democracy. I think it has more to do with them trying to attack people who they think are going to vote for Democrats over
listen.
Republicans.
Do you think there's an aspect there of Republicans trying to appeal to the racist part of their demographic? You know, because Republicans
Oh
tend
no.
to attract. No, I'm just saying that neo Nazis and white supremacists. No. I'm attacking the sentiment behind the question, right? Um, conspiracy theory. Pangburn, you're denying. Really, I can provide you 100 studies right now on systemic racism. Yes, of course it is. Because a black person and a white person going through the system. Yes. No. Right. So 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 listen. You can't demonstrate if an individual is racist. Okay. No, because you can demonstrate
So
with
there's no such
collective
thing as
bias.
racism.
No. You can't demonstrate it within a specific individual, but with a group of people, you can demonstrate some racial bias present there. Yes, it's been done several times. I can provide you papers.
Yeah, you can demonstrate it. You can demonstrate
Pangburn,
racial
let me ask you,
bias, but you
Pangburn,
have to. I'm saying you have to demonstrate it, and if you can demonstrate it, bring it to lawmakers right now, and I will support you if you can demonstrate it, and we will go and prosecute those who are engaging in systemic racism because it's against the law.
So what did you think about that study when they had a black person and a white person have a CV written with the exact same CV and the white name got twice as many callbacks as the black name? How'd you explain that?
Yeah, have you seen the competing studies where it was
that's a horrible
reverse?
study.
It was the reverse
I don't get that
effect. So why are
Do
you
you know what
buying
name they
it?
used?
So why are you buying into the one study? And
Travis, do you know what name they used?
Ziad,
Yes.
you should. So okay. So you believe you can demonstrate that systemic racism still exists, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why haven't you taken this to the police?
Because I already told you I can't prove a specific individual is racist.
And
Same
do
with
you
implicit
believe
bias.
and do you and how do you know if you cannot prove that they are racist? How do you know that they are racist?
Because the studies I'm showing
No. Stop dodging.
What?
If
No, I'm answering your question.
I'm asking you about racism on the individual level.
Yes.
How would you go about demonstrating whether someone is racist or not?
Oh no, I can't do that. I can only do
Yes,
that.
you can. If someone
No, I
if
can't.
someone utters, into their police collar, like, I can't wait to run down this black
Look,
piece
even
of shit.
look. Even Richard Spencer. Look, even Richard Spencer won't go out and say I hate black people. Even he won't do that. People
do you
don't
believe?
say.
Okay, what does he say about black people?
Well, he says
doesn't want to
behind
live
closed
with
doors.
them, right?
He's a white supremacist.
Yeah, he
thinks
doesn't want
white
to. He doesn't want to live with them.
It's a bit more than that, but yeah.
Yeah.
But
So does that
are you
necessarily mean, Ziad? I'm going to test your epistemology right now.
Yeah.
Do you know that he is racist?
I can inductively reason that there's a very high probability that he's racist. Yeah.
When he tells you that, or do you know that he hates black people?
Oh no, it's just very likely given his positions.
Do you believe that he hates black people?
I don't have certainty in it, but I'm fairly certain.
I'm asking you
sure.
if you have a positive belief, or are you atheist to that?
I'd say, yeah, I probably do believe he's racist, yeah, but not with certainty.
But do you
yeah.
believe he hates black people when he tells you he does not hate them? He just thinks white people are superior to black people.
Have you heard the comments he made behind closed doors?
Don't dodge. I want to stay exactly.
I know.
Right
I'm
here.
aware.
I'm asking
aware.
you
He
for
doesn't-
your epistemic standards for the things you think you know
okay.
about Richard
Now-
Spencer.
Well, now there was a debate between Vosh and Count Dankula, and Count Dankula just basically kept repeating that ask me if I'm racist, and Vosh said to him, I don't care what you say, I care about your actions. Now I'm going to say the same thing about Richard Spencer. I don't care what he says. He could be lying. I don't know. I'm going to look at his actions and the people he attracts and the demographics that follow him on Twitter and YouTube.
Yeah.
And,
So
he
if he
attracts all
doesn't
the
want to,
racists.
so if he doesn't want to live with around black people and he thinks white people are superior to black people, does that mean that your conclusion is he hates black people?
Oh no, I'm just saying that there's a good chance that he does hate black people. Yeah.
Okay, I'm asking you, do you have sufficient demonstration to believe that claim?
Well, the former two premises we can both agree upon, right?
I'm asking you if you agree with the conclusion
Yeah, I
based
know.
on those two premises.
I'm gonna get you. Yeah, I'm gonna get you to how I agree with the conclusion. Yeah, the first two premises are justified. Yeah.
We have good reason to believe that the first two premises are
Like
accurate.
he wants to be separate.
Yeah.
He wants to be separate from black people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what was the second one? I forgot. Sorry.
He doesn't want to live around black people, and he thinks that white people are superior to black people. So white supremacy.
Okay. No. Every single example I've seen of white supremacists in the modern day despise black people. If you look at the KKK, they don't like black people. It's not just that they want white people to be separate.
Yeah.
They just don't like. They actually don't like black people.
Yeah.
Now,
So some.
why would you?
I'm saying some might, but I want to see your demonstration of those who you think do
I
hate
told
black
you.
people.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I
would
know,
it
I
be
know.
something if they said, I hate black people, I think they should be, thrown off the face of this planet? That would be a demonstration of someone hating black people, right?
99% of people who hate black people don't say they hate black people. People aren't stupid. They know.
But if you go around trying to mind read people to try to figure out who hates black people and who doesn't based on actions you think are hateful, someone else might think, and this is where I think your epistemology will fall apart. Someone else might think that the fact that you want to be separated from a certain group and that you think you're better than that certain group doesn't necessarily mean that you hate that group.
I'm not saying it just based upon that. There's a lot of ethnostatus.
I know, but we were using the two premises
I know. But I'm saying that from what I've seen with his other rhetoric and the people he attracts and what he said behind closed doors, I can actually find you the clip right now. I'm fairly convinced that he does hate black people. Yeah, or at least he takes a strong dislike towards them.
And it may be the case that he does, but I'm just saying, you want, I think things that you believe in positively, you should be able to state why you believe that, like the important things behind why you would make that positive claim. And someone asks you, oh, well, what's your justification for that? And then if you're like, oh, I got to go find it. It's like, I don't think that's.
I gave you my justification pretty clearly, didn't I? I didn't hesitate on any of the points I made.
No, you did, but I think you're making a logical leap, and you're not being true to language when you say that someone who wants to separate themselves from another particular group and says that they're better than that group necessarily means that they hate them. But we can move forward from this because we can appeal
to the audience.
Sorry,
we can appeal to the audience actually.
Yeah, anyone can feel free to jump in here.
Do you guys agree with me that if somebody feels that they should be separated from a group of people, from a very specific race of people, and that they think that they're superior, that they probably have some animosity towards the other group, otherwise why would you want to separate from them, right?
You may think that, like a lot of white supremacists do think that, you don't want to live around a race that has a lower IQ, like a lot of people who buy into this race realism thing.
Yeah.
And
Travis, you're aware that.
And what?
Sorry, yeah, you're aware that the IQ gap, it's entirely environmental.
We're not going down the IQ. I was giving examples of arguments some white supremacists make. Yeah, but stay within the context of the conversation. I was mentioning it not in support of that. I was mentioning it that some white supremacists will cite that as a reason for why they don't want to live around black people. But that wouldn't necessarily mean that they hate black people for that reason. I don't make that logical leap. Why do you?
Because you're aware that implicit within that claim is that they believe the IQ gap to be genetic, right? Because if it's environmental, then they can fix it and they can integrate black people. But if you think it's genetic, then obviously there's no integration there.
Right. So whether they believe it's genetic or not, where do you get hate out of that? Them coming to that conclusion? Because now they believe in conspiracy theories in which a certain group with a certain color of skin has a genetic predisposition towards, you know how they talk, man? Yes.
They talk about how they have a predisposition towards crime.
Yes. So, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to hate them.
Okay. Now, if every single piece of evidence available contradicts that point, and somebody continues to believe it, you have to question the intentions of the one making the claim.
Don't you believe in the 9/11 conspiracy as well?
You're
engaging in the same conspiratorial line drawing as you did.
No, I don't believe in you.
But you're engaging in that same kind of conspiratorial line drawing where people would be like, "There's 400,000 pages of facts that prove that George Bush must have known." It's like, okay, it's possible he didn't know, but I mean, you're gonna look at all of these stacks of facts that I've drawn these conspiratorial lines to and just throw them away.
You're literally just going full anti-intellectual on me right now, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm simplifying exactly what you're doing with this idea of wanting to be away from someone and thinking that you're superior to a group means hate, and I just think that's. So,
what do you think about ethnostates then? What do you think about ethnostates? Like the principle behind it.
What do you mean? And does this have to do with the topic?
I'm just curious as to what you think now. About ethnostate.
Well, what do you mean? What do I think about ethnostate? Ask me something specific about it.
Like, just what do you think? What are your thoughts? Do you think it's good to set one up? Do you think it'd be economically viable? Do you think it'd benefit humanity?
To have certain ethnicities living in certain states?
So that's what an ethnostate is, yeah.
No, I don't want to live in a world like that. I get a lot of pleasure of interacting with other cultures and races, so I don't want to see ethnic splits.
Right. Now, can I pull from you the point that the only way by which you can justifiably call for an ethnostate is if you think differences between races are genetic and not environmental, yeah?
Say that again?
Sorry, this is kind of, I need to word it better. Okay, the only way by which you could make a logical argument for an ethnostate is if you believe that differences between races are due to biology and not environment, yeah?
That's false.
There's so many arguments. There's so many arguments you could make, depending on what your moral foundation is. But Doolittle,
no, that's completely wrong. No, what he said is completely wrong.
Doctor, do you think the
let
cocaine
Doolittle
and
let Doolittle
crack
and
law?
let Doolittle finish?
Yeah.
Why do you
If
think it's
difference-
wrong?
Go ahead,
Doolittle?
Doctor.
If differences between races are environmental and not genetic, then all states are ethnostates.
What? Wait, what the? Explain that, please. Can you
What-
explain that?
went over our heads.
Isn't that just true on the face of it?
Do you know what
So
national state is?
if you have a state that creates
Yeah.
the same environment for all the people within that state, then it creates the same race for all the people within that state. So like if we have a state called America, everyone in America is an American, and that's their race because environment is what creates race, not genetics.
Oh my god. Do you know what race means? Do you know what race means?
Apparently, we don't know what race means.
Race is basically just the external characteristics. Black, white, brown. No, it's not caused by environment. It's caused by biology.
That's what you just. So you're in favor of an ethnostate then?
No, because I think the differences are only skin deep. Ethnostatists say things like blacks have a predisposition towards committing crime, and black people have different skull shapes, and they've got lower IQs because of that. That's the argument ethnostatists make.
No, an ethnostate is the argument that state boundaries should be the same as national boundaries, and if you have state boundaries that are different than national boundaries, then it results in wars. I don't. It doesn't sound like you've read the arguments on both sides of this.
I promise you, I have. I don't
But
know what definition
you've never heard this. You never heard this before.
Typically, when people talk about ethnostates, sometimes they can refer to ethnicity, but people are typically talking about race. Yeah. Like.
So
I'm talking about the difference between nations and states, and nations are groups of people that have the same values and this, purportedly the same ethnicity.
No one uses ethnostate in that way. No one uses it to describe nationality. They use it to describe ethnicity or race, not nationality.
Right. So what you said that if you think that there should be an ethnostate, then that means you fallaciously believe that the state. I'm sorry, that the race is defined by your genetics, not by your environment.
No differences.
That was the claim. That was the claim.
No,
that
sorry,
was the claim,
no.
that you made.
I said differences between the races. You can ask Travis. I did say that. I said differences between the races are due to differences in genetics, not differences in environment.
Well, which one is true? Is it genetics or environment?
It's environment, man. Come on, the biologists.
Environment.
So you're making a claim that
environment.
There's no
claim
proof
that
of genetics. There's no proof of genetics, is what he's saying. He's saying that it's obviously the environment.
Ziad, you understand environment builds genetics, right?
Black people and white people have only been separate for like.
Yes, all I'm saying is,
Ziad,
the fact that you won't agree to that, I just said
no, I agree.
The environment builds genetics, right? And then you went somewhere else. Okay, well, let's keep this honest.
I agree.
No, he acknowledged it. He says the amount of time is nothing in environment in genetic change.
Look, we've been on this planet for billions of years. Yeah, 10,000 years is nothing in evolutionary terms. That's a blink of an eye.
Why do you think
human beings?
So you're telling me a couple of centuries?
Here, let's go Mace.
Going to change people genetically.
Let's go Mace, Nivik, then Scott. Mace, go ahead.
Black people and white people have only been separated in their evolution for a short period of time, hence why there are so few differences between them, and there are more differences between individuals than races.
Correct. Nivik, what do you got?
That's kind of what I was going to say. I was pretty much going to say that a couple of centuries isn't nothing in evolution. So I mean, like but an environment can instantly affect you instantaneously in comparison to genetic change. If you infect somebody right now of the environment, it's instantaneously. You're not going to suddenly be morphing genetically at that moment.
Yeah, no one's making that argument, Nivik. Scott, did you have something there?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. It's longer than just instant though, Nivek. So I think Ziad said like been around for billions of years. Humans have only been around for about 250,000 years at tops. Differentiation between skin color, all that kind of stuff, that's probably been going on for, 90,000 years. We can look at the oldest proof that we have of people coming to America is about 10,000 years ago. They had already differentiated enough in population and skin color and different certain traits. So, I mean, these things aren't just instant. It's still a matter of, a couple thousand generations.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no.
Right, but also there's also evidence that a few tens of thousands of years ago there was a mass extinction event that wiped out all but a small handful of the human population, and we're all descendants of those same people.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're trying to say, right? I mean those guys came out of Africa 10,000 years ago, and it's not been much time since then.
Oh, I thought it was Mongolia, but okay.
I don't know, somewhere around there. But the generic point is what matters. The scientists have very thoroughly.
Yes.
The scientists have very thoroughly debunked any arguments that state that the genetics play a significant role. The Flynn effect probably.
I mean, there hasn't been I don't think there hasn't been an argument that hasn't been debunked by a scientist. Yeah. All arguments have been debunked by some scientist somewhere.
That's also the same thing. Like, why does it even come to skin color? Like, if we're talking about like how well people do, about how many different things can you compare that people have? Like a widow's peak or like connected earlobes. Like connected earlobes could be the thing that really determines whether somebody's intelligent or not, right?
Well, it is the widow's peak that determines whether you're intelligent.
There's all sorts of factors like that. So of course, like skin color just being this one tiny genetic factor, there's no possible way that that's the fucking reason why somebody's more or less successful. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, there's especially when you just look at the world when there's so many explanations that are easy to make.
Yeah, go ahead, Ziad.
So yeah, we just took a massive tangent. So all I was trying to say was that given the fact that there's no good argument for an ethno-state, and all the differences are environmental by academic consensus.
There are no good arguments. Ziad, there are no good arguments that you're willing to make based on your moral foundation, but some people's moral foundations are different, right? And they're going to cite things. And
Travis?
Sorry, when you say good.
No, Travis, this isn't a philosophical issue. This is just like the academic consensus.
The what? Oh, wait. The what consensus?
The academic consensus.
The academic consensus is that something isn't good?
No, that the environment doesn't cause disparities between races.
No. I was talking about the qualifier of good that you put on what you just said.
Obviously, you really want to swing this into a moral debate.
It isn't good.
This is a massive pivot, man. Come on, there's no need to lose this.
It's not a pivot. It's when you put a value claim that there are no good arguments for an ethno-state. You said that as though everyone was.
Can I address it, Travis? Can I give it a shot?
Yeah, go for it.
You see that type of purity mindset. It's regressive. It doesn't stop. If you take people like that and you put them on the island by themselves, they'll divide along.
Who
something
are you
else.
arguing with, Nivik?
Who
are you talking to? No one said anything antithetical to what you're saying. So you're just saying it for the sake of saying it.
Like Travis,
I'm saying how things are regressive when a person have that type of mindset.
He's basically saying that
de-diversifying is bad. Monarchs thought they thought like purity of blood was a good thing. So they banged their daughter, and really they were genetically devolving themselves. They were taking a diversity out of their genome to adapt, and that made them more sick.
So you're making an argument.
I'm talking about
you're
its
making
regression.
a survival. You're making a survival argument, right? Like
No, I'm talking about potential of evolution. We're if you
only
you
if you
evolve,
think
if
that's
you
good.
devolve, you take up potential of evolution. It's a bad thing.
Nivik, all I'm saying is only if you think that's good, right?
No, I'm explaining how it's not good.
I know you don't think that's good. But if you're going to pick you have to kind of outline what metric you're making that value claim based on.
For self and others, well-being, and see that's
no. Nivik, don't get into it. Don't get into it. Travis, by good I meant sound. There, done.
What's that?
By good I meant sound.
Okay.
That's it. No need to get into this. Cool. Happy.
Yeah.
There's no sound argument for a genetic difference.
Sure.
Cool. Now the fact that people like Richard Spencer and Nick Fuentes perpetuate these hoaxes, even though they're smart people and they understand that there's no evidence supporting their claim, it shows some underlying conscious prejudice on their behalf. I think that proves it pretty clearly, to be fair.
Wait, underlying what do you think demonstrates the unconscious bias?
The fact that they call for an ethno-state in spite of knowing that there's no genetic differences between the races.
Those people don't know that.
I don't think that's... Look, I'm 18, yeah, and I know this. I'm sure Nick Fuentes knows this.
Man,
I'm sure Richard Spencer knows this.
This is weak.
I think it's free.
If people are living in a sea of ignorance and they find their way into white nationalism and you're gonna say like, you know, oh, they know that it's true. Nick
Fuentes knows what he's talking about. He knows better than me. He's a smart guy. I guarantee you he does. He's a very smart guy. He definitely knows.
Yeah, I just I think you're getting into mind reading at that point, so it's not very useful.
Would you just call everything that I can't directly 100% deductively prove? Would you just call that mind reading?
When you're looking into someone's mind and saying that they hate this, they hate that, and your demonstration of that are things like wanting to be away from it. Like do you hate do you hate grizzly bears?
No.
Do you want to live right beside a grizzly bear?
No.
Do you think you're intellectually superior to a grizzly bear?
Yes.
This is the same fallacious thinking.
Travis, I can prove that there's a genetic difference between me and the grizzly bear. All right?
There is. Hang on. There's a genetic difference between you and every individual.
No, but that genetic difference isn't responsible for the disparities which are normalized in society.
Yes, that's fine. And
okay, but now the disparities between me and the grizzly bear's intelligence is entirely caused by genetics.
So you don't suspect that there would be any variation between racial groups when it comes to IQ? Any?
Oh no, there is, but the studies clearly show that that's due to environment. Look, the IQ
right. I agree, and I agree that environment and culture are the things that really do shape these things over time.
Aren't you mostly shaped by the environment from your parents?
Yeah, you are. So
aren't you making the case for racial segregation then? If somebody doesn't want to live with somebody that's creating a different environment that they don't think they should have to live with.
Oh no, but isn't
that the most valid reason for segregation?
No, because the environment
not wanting to have to raise your children in the environment that another group of people is making.
No, because that environment can be rectified by social programs. There's no need for an ethno-state there. There's no need. You can just rectify that.
By the way, doctor, it's people who want to be racist.
If you use the state to create the same environment,
I want to respond to you, doctor.
Then you have an ethno-state.
Can I respond to what you just said?
Yeah, go ahead.
What?
Doctor, if you have people who want to, or that are racist that want to be by themselves, they can be by themselves. People that aren't interested in segregation, that are of different races, they can be amongst each other. It's not that oh, because other people they have an issue with you, then you want to be segregated only amongst your own people. No, you want to be segregated amongst cool people and of whatever culture, whatever religion or whatever race. It doesn't mean that you're not gonna. It doesn't mean that you're a racist because racists are racist against you, and you're avoiding racism.
When you specifically
you're accusing a person. You're accusing a person that
then you're talking
you're
about
accusing
me.
a person that's being racist being racist and wanting to segregate themselves. And the reality is, it's the racist that's if a race person if somebody's racist against them is what they is the issue of what they want to get away from. It's not that they want to it's not that they want to segregate themselves. So you're projecting the racist onto the person that's trying to avoid the racist. You're saying they're racist.
No, I'm not.
Well, yes, that's what you just did. You just said that. Well, you want to avoid the racist. So you're trying to say that you want to be amongst your own people. No, that's not what the argument is.
No, I didn't.
The argument is you don't want to be around.
Doolittle did not make that claim.
Yes, he did.
That he wants that. You're trying to make it sound like he made that claim of something he wants.
He said that not wanting to be around racists and stay away from them, that means you wanting to segregate yourself is the same thing of what those people are doing. And the reality is people don't want to segregate themselves only to be amongst themselves. They want to be around people who don't want to be around them. It's not that they don't want to be around people that in being racist against other people. It's that the origin comes from a person that has issue with them. It's not the other way around. It's kind of like saying.
Let's listen to the whole argument, okay? And I'm making the case that
you're not following though. See, some folks
you're blathering about what I want, and I don't have to necessarily follow you putting words into my mouth.
Yeah,
Nivek, some folks say, why don't black people move on about racism? And the reality is, it's the people that are racist that won't move on with that of being racist. It's not that they won't move on. It's not you're dropping it on them.
So I'm just trying to lay out a logical argument that's consistent of how a person could want to segregate. I personally don't live a segregated life, and if I wanted to, I would. Okay, but we're using your own definitions and the own premises that you accept to make a logical argument of how somebody could want to segregate. So the differences between individuals are largely created by the environment. A large part of your environment is created by your parents and the community that you live in.
Yeah.
Parents want to raise their children in an environment that they think is best for their children. So they might want to segregate themselves and their children from the influences of an environment which they think will negatively impact the ability of their children to thrive in the world. That's what I'm saying. Okay? I didn't even say anything about anybody's color of skin. Now, if you think that the best thing for your children is to grow up in a Christian environment and go to church every Sunday and etc., you're going to segregate yourself into a community where you can find other God-fearing people that like to go to church and schools that allow school prayer, and maybe even send your kids to a Catholic,
So, doctor,
private school. If you think the biggest threat is violent crime, then you're going to look on a map and say, "Oh man, I don't want to live in that neighborhood that's got a lot of violent crime. I'm going to move out into places that have less violent crime."
I understand your point.
I can raise my children.
So how would that completely work if you're telling you're saying you should more look inward in the family and focusing on inward and not acknowledge the environment around you? I mean, like, how's that? the environment, you're part of the environment that's outside of you. You're not separate from that.
The environment.
That's impossible.
No, you're by definition you're separate from the environment.
The environment dictates your actions. You're not separate from the environment.
Hey guys, I need to head off now, but it was nice talking to you all, yeah?
Yeah, thanks for stopping by, man. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no worries, take it. Goodbye, man.
Jack Killian, we haven't heard from you. Memix, Polly Sai, Shambi, welcome to the room.
What's up? What's up?
What do you guys? Let's open it up here. What do you guys think? What are you hearing?
So far, I think like the actual question of this, the whole thing, like I was saying just a little bit earlier, I think if you were to ask this question like 70 years ago, you could make a really, really, really fucking hard case for everything that was being said. But I think that today, as the question is, when it comes specifically to the laws that we have, it's there's no laws that I've been able to hear about or have been pointed to that are inherently racist.
Right. So let's try to focus on critical race theory itself. And let's open this up again to the room. What do you guys know about critical race theory? What do you think it is? Is it useful? Is it useless? Just let's hear your take, even if you have to pull up, a working definition to read off of and think about it. Just feel free.
Yeah, so I'm trying to find an article with the 5 tenets of critical race theory that's not behind a paywall, so that it can make sense what we're talking about.
The Google definition, at least just from the beginning wiki article part of it that they got here, is critical race theory is a body of legal scholarship and an academic movement of civil rights scholars and activists in the United States. It seeks to critically examine U.S. law as it intersects with the issues of race in the U.S. and to challenge mainstream American liberal approaches to racial justice.
Right, but it's purportedly a set of beliefs and actions that I suppose they want to get something out of it, but does it say what the end state is? It's not really clear what the end state is, but there's essentially five tenets of critical race theory in terms of, if you want to call it an ism, what are the things that people are supposed to believe in. It doesn't lead you to solving any problems or to living a moral life.
Okay, I got it.
It's simply a system of.
I found them.
It's simply a system of challenging the way that things are currently structured to destroy them, and it doesn't actually purport to replace it with anything that's productive or anything other than degenerate argumentation.
Alrighty, we've got it says there are 5 major components or tenets of critical race theory. The notion that racism is ordinary and not aberrational. 2, the idea of an interest convergence. 3, the social construction of race. 4, the idea of storytelling and counter-storytelling. And 5, the notion that whites have actually been recipients of civil rights legislation.
Okay, I was confused because those were in a different order than what I heard them in before.
Yeah, that last one's a little...
So is the story and counter storytelling is that referring to history?
Yeah, so counter storytelling is basically the tenet is that if you hear a historical account of really anything, then critical race theory demands that you retell that. No. Demands that you frame that story as false and retell it from the perspective of a.
No. It doesn't demand that you say that story is false. Basically, the idea when they say storytelling is that they're using. It's basically the same kind of thing that Jordan Peterson is into. Where you're using stories to demonstrate something that's truthful.
No.
So
the tenet of critical race theory is counter storytelling. It's not.
No. It said storytelling and counter storytelling. But
the practice of offering a counter narrative that challenges the logic and assumptions of the mainstream narratives. It's a political strategy.
Guys.
Yes, it's still just using a story, though, right?
I mean, I can stop someone when they start using false premises.
It's not a false premise. It's because I'm looking at it right now. The use of narrative storytelling to illuminate and explore lived experience of racial oppression. Brian Brayboy has emphasized the epistemic importance of storytelling in Indigenous and American communities as superseding that of theory, and has proposed tribal critical race theory based on that. So that's what I'm saying. From what I've seen, what I looked at, it's more along the idea. So instead of saying like, okay, we have empirical evidence for this, and this, which is I thought what you were arguing earlier, and I agreed with you. That in this, what they're basically saying is the use of storytelling is.
That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the tenet of counter storytelling.
Yeah, but didn't when Jack read it off, it was storytelling, counter storytelling, and something else, right?
So we're talking about different things then.
The idea of storytelling and counter storytelling.
Yeah. So it said like to me when I hear that, it's more about like the use of narrative to like try to like persuade as opposed to using empirical evidence. That's the way I took it. Just personally.
Right. So counter storytelling.
What I'm reading off of real quick is Critical Race Theory: An Examination of Its Past, Present, and Future Implications by Nicholas Daniel Hartlip, MSED, University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. Data publication October 11th, 2009.
So does CRT believe that the institution of slavery is the fault of the white race, or the problem of the power structure that was simply in place and the white person just happened to be there at the time? Power structure.
Well, from what I'm reading, I don't think it even talks about like the initiation of slavery or anything like that. It's basically talking about like law and how to communicate things, right? But it's very, very academic in nature. Essentialism versus anti-essentialism. This goes with these issues concerned with the appropriate unit for analysis that can order many communities to middle working women. Okay.
Sorry I'm late to the party. I'm wondering if anyone has actually read the book Critical Race Theory.
Well, there's lots of books on critical race theory.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only mention what I've like listened to on TV. So perhaps what I'm bringing up is like the very far left of critical race theory.
But Mark, if you have some citations you want to read, and then we can talk about. But before we get there, before we go to Mark on that, I just want to read, we got 100 votes in already, just posted this. How would you describe critical race theory? The options were useful, useless, other. Comment below. So useful sitting at 20%, useless is sitting at 59%, other is sitting at 21%. And I just want to feature some of the comments here. Che DM, thanks for your comment, says worse than useless, dangerous in all caps.
Dangerous.
OG Zombie Blunt, thanks for your comment, says racist. How would you describe critical race theory? They say racist. Sensible 116 says useful, because people ought to learn that the vast ethnic disparities is not an issue of genetics, skull shapes, or some other nonsense. Rather, it is a product of policy and environment. That is by Sensible 116. Thank you for your comment. And someone by the name of, get this, just an S, that's their name, they said, how would you describe critical race theory? Pernicious garbage. So that's what we got in so far. The Pangburn audience on YouTube so far is leaning, just jumped up to 60% useless. And if you guys were to click on that poll, would you click other, add a comment, or let's say, do you think do you think it's mostly useful or mostly useless? What do you guys think?
If you have to choose mostly one.
Yeah, I would say mostly useless, but I do think that it's useful if it's one of those things where you can do the pointing out.
Yeah, well,
critical race theory would be really great if you could point out something specific.
Yeah, like if you used it,
useless still has use.
That's why I say mostly useless. But like if there was something very specific to talk about, then I think it could potentially be useful. But other than that, just pointing a stick and being like, "There's racism out there," isn't really helpful.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The critical race theory is not just saying there's racism out there, and I know it's like that's a thing. Like this is an actual like defined academic study, right? You know, this is like a field of academics relating to law. It's not like if you just went to law school and you learned about critical race theory, they're just going to like say there's racism out there. It's like no, they're going to be like, okay, well let's break it down. Let's look at the history of where things were. So these are the laws that were first passed, and here's how we know like these laws when these laws were passed in the 1700s. Obviously, they're racist. Like there are things that were quite clear about that, and this is what lawyers do. I mean, right? I mean, nowadays lawyers, when they learn,
but he's
law,
talking about this
just
past.
go and but I'm saying that's the whole point of the theory, though, right? It's to look at the past and like be like, okay.
No, you forget about the past. It never happened. Just focus on today.
Well, sure. No,
I understand.
I understand them looking at the past to get an idea of like how things happen based off of policies that were done. But I think when it comes to the legitimate look at the law, as it is as the law today, there's not really anything to go on. But it looks like it led here from here.
I think
my
saying
it looks like it led here from here is really, really good.
Yeah,
but it doesn't do anything.
I want taxpayer money to be spent on programs that are led by evidence, that are led by proof, I don't want conspiratorial thinking and line drawing saying, well, it's possible that the laws are cloaked in all of these racist underpinnings and we're going to investigate and see what we can find. It's like, I think lawmakers have already done that. And like I said, if we catch someone breaking the rules with regards to that, we can prosecute them. Now, if someone's to say the practical application of critical race theory would come when we suspect that there might be a race problem within a certain specific area, and we need to go and investigate, maybe some elements of critical race theory can be used to investigate that. But my question is critical race theory a better approach than what we just currently do in law enforcement? Like, is it adding anything?
Yeah, so I mean, this is something I thought about when I was away from the mic for a second. So and I think it's one of those things that the problem that we come down to is that there is room for improvement, right? So we can all agree that you can run into some sort of sheriff's deputy who is racist and he's doing shit with the power that he has. And that guy is legitimately racist.
Of course.
So to me, it comes down to, so what can we do to restrict that behavior? So it's not necessarily that we have laws right now. And this is why I sort of disagree with the idea of systemic racism, because there's not laws that say you can be racist. But I do think we have sort of like an open area where it allows a certain amount of behavior to get through, and we just need to shore those things up. The same way we didn't have laws against Ponzi schemes until Ponzi did what he did, and it's like, okay, well, let's make a law against Ponzi schemes,
right? Because we don't want those things. And
I think we were specifically talking about law enforcement. I think. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, of course, I doubt anyone's gonna argue against weeding out the bad actors, right?
Exactly.
Like the deputy.
Exactly.
And of course, when he's busted, he's fucked. Like that's the kind of system we live in. We don't live in a system that catches that guy doing that and says, hey, well, if you're getting away with it, I don't see a problem. It's like, then you would have some evidence of systemic racism going on if it was in the books to say, so long as people get away with the racism within the system and we don't notice it, okay, fine, they can do that. It's like, or if you're going to be blunt with it and come out and say, a deputy is allowed to treat black people much harsher than than white people. Then you have the laws of pre-Civil War crap going on. So
what about crack and cocaine?
I think the addition to
and the jailing.
Yeah, those laws, although they affect a certain race more than others, Nivik, it still means the same for a white crackhead as it does to a black crackhead.
Well, it's okay. It's kind of like saying, "Oh, you have grass over there, and I have gravel over here. I'm gonna these group of folks just happen to be more towards the grass, so the fine of walking on the grass, it's 20 times higher compared to the fine that's walking on the gravel. It just coincidentally worked out that way. I'm sure there's no type of
yes, and when you say, I'm sure there's no kind of you're trying to draw a conspiratorial line to something else that you don't have.
I get it. It's a conspiracy.
Yeah, right. It actually is. If you're trying to wish something or argue something into existence through conspiratorial line drawing, it is conspiracy.
Yeah, I get it. But certain things to certain degrees, nothing is 100% when it comes to.
Yeah, no one's saying
because there's always varying degrees. There's always varying degrees of something. So you can take in factors. You get what I'm saying, and you can come to a conclusion. But you could always say, well, it's a conspiracy because there's always this. It's not 100%, and there's this probability of it not really being the case. I mean, but then again, I mean, that's how people rationalize. You weigh things, and it's kind of like, no, I'm not going to.
If your inferences lead you to believe someone is racist and they're telling you to your face that they are not racist.
No. I'm just saying a factor. Like if somebody's just coincidentally doing something to you, then to another person, in a way that seems unfair.
So this happens with sexism all the time too, Nivik, where some women who are hypersensitive to trying to suss out where the sexists are, they will be told that their attitude is shit and they're fired. And then the person automatically, and I've talked to them before, many of them, and they'll say, they'll say, well, I was fired because I'm a woman, obviously. And I'm like, well, based on what you described to me and that you were written up a few times for having a bad attitude and things like that, it's like, I don't see any evidence that you were fired because you were a woman. It seems as though you were fired because you were being an asshole to people you were working with. So when we set up these like dichotomies, racist or not racist, sexist or not sexist, and we're walking around in this, suffering avoidance approach to these issues, and people are just like trying to they're waiting to be racialized, or they're waiting to be sexualized, and I just don't think that's a good way to live, and I think it's the wrong way to go about dealing with these issues. I think people should be. I think comedians deal with these issues well. Any kind of prejudice, past or present, that might exist with regards to boomers or whatever select group you want to look at. I think comedians deal with it best, and we need to not and this idea, this counter argument where people are like, oh yeah, so we just stop talking about it and then it goes away. It's like, no one has said that either. It's like it's some people will say, in a very hyperbolic way, just like, stop fucking being so obsessed with race. Like, stop being so obsessed with it. It's like and it's not just coming from like white people saying this. Black people say it too. Asians say it too. Why are people so obsessed with race? And then some people will argue, well, it's because it's so deeply ingrained in our society. We can't escape it. It's so deeply ingrained into our laws. And then we're like, well, we've done our best to weed out bad actors. Show us where it is so we can go prosecute it.
Well, I would say it's deeply ingrained into the psyche, that's the thing that's going to take longer to get over. Like, so all of a sudden we could pass laws that eliminated everything, but the impact that it had on the psyche of people who actually went through it, that's a tough one, right?
So you mean the psyche of
like, we'll say somebody's grandpa went through like some really terrible shit, and then their dad went through terrible shit in the 60s, and they grew up, and like that's the lessons that they learn. That's what I mean by psyche. So like there's this thing that it will take a
but
a
I think
long
that breaches all
Interesting.
races,
I feel
all races, right?
It does.
I feel
Exactly. It's that has nothing to do with race, but that's just like the specific situations that were happening back then that happened to intersect with race, right?
What do you got, Jack?
I feel interesting about that point that was made there, because I like, for me it's very far removed, just because I'm 24. So when I hear somebody, it's somebody's great grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's not somebody's grandpa, and almost everybody in my generation that I interact with on a regular basis, it's so removed.
Well, a lot
like,
of
I don't
black
remember, I don't remember the last time in my age group, like
also, Jack, did you ever learn
somebody was being, what's that?
Did you ever learn any lessons from your dad growing up?
Yeah.
So did your dad ever learn any lessons from your grandpa?
Yeah.
So that's
I would assume so.
So that's my point. So like,
well,
it's,
right.
Like a meme being passed down.
Right.
So, like,
but I don't see. But what you're talking about, I don't see in my peers today as such a as a type of.
You don't see it, but it's still there. I mean, that's the thing.
Okay. Let me say I don't see it. I haven't seen it be brought up in any single interaction except for very radical times.
It may be there. It may be there, Scott, but it could be an idea, bad ideas that he has disposed of, right?
Oh no. So when I say like these ideas, so like to say your grandpa's like, oh well, if a cop comes up, just say howdy, and like, it's like you're good, and like your dad passes it on, and you have this idea of like how you interact with cops. And then somebody who's black who had these interactions with cops like in the fucking 40s, and then their kid in the 50s and 60s, they're gonna be like, you need to fucking be on high alert around these motherfuckers.
Yeah, and that's culture.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's this psyche. That's what I'm trying to get at.
So definitely the ideological culture there that's passed on through your lineage, definitely.
Yes. Yeah.
I would like to ask Nivik a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Nivik. So if I could drive you to the regional jail, that's about 45 minutes from me. It's going to be about 98% white, and I'm going to guess about 90% of those guys in there are in there for drug crimes. Would you attribute that to racism or to policing and the enforcement of the drug laws?
Well, I don't know if it would. I mean, if you
ratio again?
He said that there's a high ratio of blacks in higher ratio of blacks in jail than whites.
No. It's basically all white people.
Okay. So
all white people. Yeah.
Okay. So when I mentioned, so you're responding to the comment that I made with the longer sentences, right? And is that what you're doing?
you're just saying that
you're debunking the crack cocaine argument and the cocaine argument. I don't. If I so you're telling me it's more fair to hit a black person harder with a penalty because they're more into drugs is what you're arguing.
No, I'm just asking you a question. Just forget what you said about the crack cocaine stuff.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, that's the.
Do you attribute that to just enforcement of the law?
Yeah, it's enforcement of the law.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
So, what's your?
No further questions, Your Honor.
So, if it's a white person, it's the enforcement of the law. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, there's still law. I still point out a unfair connection, disparity with. I mean, like if
so then how do you determine if a black person is arrested that it's racism?
I said that if a law more if a black person more does one thing, I made a relation between two things that are the same and how one is more harshly punished than the other of crimes that are the same. I mean,
are you aware that black men in prison are you aware that black men in prison will not take plea deals because they believe that they cannot rat on other people?
Same with the cops, though, too, right?
Yeah, cops don't rat on other cops.
Yep. That's an argument that I always find hilarious. Like, I've heard cops be like, well, people in these black neighborhoods are not just telling us shit. It's like, yeah, if like one of your buddies like fucking in the force did something wrong, would you say something? Fuck no. Let's
get back to critical race theory. I have a philosophical problem with critical race theory.
No. I still don't understand Jimmy Crackcorn's argument though.
Oh, he's just pointing out that you're just as racist as white people. That's all.
No, I'm just saying, like, if you have a law where it is situated where you would more likely, it's more targeted, it's unfairly targeted to you. I mean, he's pointing out a disparity, but I mean, that disparity that he pointed out would align with my argument more.
What's your argument?
The unfair the unfair targeting with one side than the other. He's like, well, hold on, they're in jail because they break the crime. I was pointing out that there's more targeting and there's harsher penalties. So, I mean, I can sum up your argument. Validates my argument.
Let me sum it up very concisely. The Nivek is basically saying that the racial disparity that you see coming from arrest is due to the laws being passed, and that's an example of systemic racism.
Oh, I just don't believe that. Does anybody believe that in here?
I do have a tendency to.
At a certain point, there was. I think it's chilled out now at this point. But at a certain point, it was in the 70s and 80s for sure, yeah. But now those laws have been changed. So,
and I was just pointing out that there are black men in prison who extend their prison sentences because they won't take deals offered to them by the prosecution while they're serving their sentences because they won't give up names. Now, that's not to say that white men don't do the same thing either.
Yeah, of course.
But
any criminal, like, can you find like an example of a Hell's Angel just rolling on his brothers? Like, ain't gonna happen. you're criminal, like there's an unspoken agreement. It's like, don't fuck us over. Cool.
I think Doolittle was going to bring us back to CRT.
I was going to bring it back to CRT, and so I have a philosophical problem with critical race theory, in general. That's not related to races, but it's critical race theory is a branch.
Is a better way to go.
Yeah, critical race theory is a branch of something called critical theory.
Yep.
And critical theory is something that grew out of, and I'm reading this sort of. I've read it for about a half an hour while you guys were talking. It grew out of a theory from Immanuel Kant, which is that we cannot know the objective world, or maybe there even is no objective world, and the only thing that you can know is your own experiences. And so, critical theory is an anti-scientific theory, which essentially it came out to challenge the Enlightenment, and the notions of the day that we can learn things through reason and evidence, and to say that we only know our own experiences, and we can only know the world through our experiences, and so therefore factual evidence is meaningless. And I don't know where you go. I don't know where you go from that. So I personally believe that there is an objective world outside of our. I'm not a brain in a vat. There is an objective world. There are many ways that I can use my personal experiences to zero in on what the objective world is, and science is one of the most important tools that we have. And critical theory and a subset of that, critical race theory, are specifically tactics to destroy that principle.
No, not necessarily. So it's sort of an add-on, because those guys don't actually say they don't actually negate reason. They just say there's no objective.
True objective knowledge is impossible.
Exactly.
And so critical race theory,
nihilism, and that's
right. So critical race theory is, we can't just go out and see if the laws are racist to determine if something is systemically racist. We have to ask a person for their anecdote. And as long as there's one person out there with an anecdote that says, I feel like I was treated unfairly, then we all have to feel guilty.
Well, not all people have to feel guilty, but here's something that
isn't that kind of what it's turned into, though?
Oh yeah. Like I know what you're saying, but I'm just trying to think back when I initially read this. I sort of had this idea. It's, oh god damn it, where did it go? Repeat what you just said, Doctor. No, we'll come right back.
I don't remember what I did. Which part of it?
Just the last thing that you said.
Isn't that what it's turned into, though? Is people telling us that we should feel guilty just because of our origins?
Yeah. So
white people need to feel guilty just because we're white, and people have written books about that exact thing.
Yeah. So I was more talking with the idea of critical theory, and with that, it was more along the ideas like you didn't necessarily negate the Enlightenment ideals. Those people were still students of the Enlightenment. Basically, what they were trying to do is they were trying to go deeper. Being like, well, is there anything that's actually truly objective? Is there any sort of true objective morality? Right? So that whole world came, like the entire idea of objective morality, which a lot of people on here are very, very much agree with. We talk about our own frameworks all the time because that implicates subjective reality versus objective. So to me, when I look at these kind of things, these ideas have already won out. It's already like we're already done with it. We're now at we're at the point where like we're gonna go into something new. It seems like to me. Yeah, like
So
the Enlightenment, the idea, the European intellectual movement in the late 17th, 18th centuries, emphasizing reason, individual rather than tradition. Yep. So then everything came down to reason and individualism, and then guys who came about like Foucault and those kind of guys, they were saying, well, maybe if it's actually something different than this, and that's where.
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem with that is they haven't replaced it with something that works.
Well, I mean, I think meta has worked. I think we're actually now at the point where we're just moving out of meta. You know, I think it's already done what it's going to do. Right now, people are just sort of like getting wind of it and like complaining about it and being like, man, it's the worst thing ever, but it's already done what it's going to do. And we're moving into something else already, which I find interesting.
Doctor, are you looking in Wiki on critical race theory?
No, you want me to?
Oh, okay. I thought that's where you were. That's where I was, because you mentioned the Enlightenment.
Well, I mean, that's factual, right? Critical theory is is a postmodernist theory, which was it's a struggle against Enlightenment philosophers.
Yeah, that's what I meant by meta, is like postmodern is already like run its full course. It's already, and we're going to move into something else. I don't think we're going to go back to modernism. You know, if you look at like what the tenets of modernism versus postmodernism or pre-modernism. So pre-modernism.
I'm not really following the
verse modernism. Hold on. Versus post-modernism.
Critical race theory have a connection with the Enlightenment.
Let's see here.
Yeah, the connection between the Enlightenment and critical race theory is that postmodernism is a counter movement to the Enlightenment, and critical theory is a theory of postmodernism, and critical race theory is a subset of critical theory. So the Enlightenment is basically that we can use reason and evidence to discover foundational truths about the universe and moral truths and so forth.
And critical race theory is contradicting.
It's contradicting that we can use reason and evidence to discover important moral truths about if you just throw the word race in there.
Yep, and it's very Jordan Peterson, right?
Okay, so it's counter to Enlightenment. I get it. I get what you're saying. So it doesn't really align with Enlightenment.
It's anti-scientific.
What's not
It says you cannot use objective evidence to determine the truth.
I'd like to get into that. I'd like to get into that because I think it's anti-Enlightenment.
Well, what says you can't use objective evidence?
Critical theory.
Oh, okay. So I think that's because of stuff that people bring up all the time, like people talk about like CSR crime reports and stuff like that. They think that the quote-unquote objective evidence that's being given to the state or to the country or to the FBI is manufactured or tailored in a way that makes their communities look better, so that the objective statistics that people are getting aren't accurate.
Doctor, it's anti-Enlightenment. Be critical races subjective it's pro-Enlightenment.
Did you disappear? I can't hear you.
Pro-Enlightenment.
What's pro-Enlightenment?
Critical race theory.
No, it's not. It's anti-Enlightenment.
No, it's pro.
Who's talking?
It's postmodernist. Postmodernist isn't the Enlightenment is modernist. postmodernist is pushing is a set of theories which was intended to dismantle modernism.
We'll sort of.
It does not build on modernism. It dismantles modernism, and the only problem is that it doesn't replace it with something that works.
I'd love to get into this. I'd love to get into this conversation with you. It's an interesting conversation.
I do want to say,
it is anti-enlightenment.
I come at this from a direction of art. Like postmodern art is like nobody has any issues with that, right? So I'm talking about
philosophy.
Yes. So
I'm not talking about like music or something like that. I'm talking about.
But it all sort of rolls into the same, right? So the idea of pre-modernism with like epistemology would be like mysticism or faith, right? And then the idea for like modernism would be like everything is based off experience and reason. And then
not based off of experience.
Well, if it's objective, that it's experience and reason.
It's experience is the opposite of objectivism.
No. Like you have to like when I say experience, I mean in the term of like you experience like looking into a microscope and seeing like the cells divide. Experiential. I'm not talking about experience in terms of a metaphysical.
You're not talking about subjective experience.
No, I'm talking about just like experience, like what you experience.
So modernism is based off of that we can come to the truth based off of objective evidence.
Let me say one thing real quick.
Senses and reason. So
give me a second. Give me a second.
I'll say your senses and your reason. And then postmodernism is about things being subjective, right? And I think we have actually, in the epistemological realm, we have actually gotten through the subjective part already. I mean, that's been going on since the 1950s, right? Just the idea that things are subjective. People were arguing about moral relativism in the 1960s because people were already doing it.
It's not something that is agreed upon.
There
are people arguing about it, but it doesn't mean that there's any kind of agreement on it whatsoever.
Not an agreement on it, but human beings were taking part in this idea, right? So that's why I'm saying, like, I think we're past, like, at this point.
Some human beings are taking part in that idea.
So I think what we're going to see next is like being like, oh no, so we have the objective, so we have to take in experience and reason, or our senses and our reasoning, but then we understand the subjectiveness this too, and that's what we're doing right now, right? So we're coming up with something. So somebody put it some way the other day of metamodernism. And that's sort of like where we are already. Like we are already taking these things because we all do recognize there is a certain subjective nature, you know, and but you can't separate the actual your actual experience or your senses and the reasoning and the logic from that and just say, oh, everything is subjective. Well, no, there's also the subjective part. So then we're now marrying those two things. That's why I think we're past it already. It's sort of strange that we even have like big like social wars over like postmodernism. It's like it's already done. It's already done, and we're moving into the next thing.
And I want to say one thing, Doctor. If you're intolerant, you're anti-reasoning, and pointing out intolerance is pro-reasoning.
What?
So pointing out intolerance.
What does tolerance have to do with reasoning? Those are orthogonal.
I'm talking about racism. I'm saying like if critical race theory is about pointing out racism. It's about pointing out intolerance. People that are intolerant, they're anti-reasoning. If you're anti-reasoning, that means you're that means you're anti-enlightenment. You don't care about reasoning. You don't care about objective fact or reality. You just if you're bigoted, if you're ideologically bigoted, So it's about people who are subjective in their thinking over objective fact and reality of a subjective view that is of bigotry. So if you're pointing out a person's subjective way of thinking, opting to a subjective way of thinking over an objective and factual way of thinking that is based off of bigotry, you're pointing out you're pro enlightenment. You're not anti enlightenment.
Me? I'm pro. Yeah, I'm pro.
I'm rationalizing things here. I'm saying if you point out a person being subjective in their reasoning of bigotry in their thinking, that is instead of being objective in fact and rationalization.
That's not what critical theory is. Not about pointing out bigotry. It's about countering the established narrative.
Pointing out bigotry is pointing out intolerance.
If the established narrative is based on science and facts, then
if you're intolerant, that means you're pro-ignorance.
Is against science
wow,
and facts.
You really fight hard for this. If you're intolerant, that means you're pro-ignorance.
Oh,
and pointing out intolerance, pointing out.
That doesn't make sense.
No,
yes.
When I think critical theory says let's just take those things into account too. I might be wrong, but I didn't think it said negate.
No, critical theory is about creating counter narratives to the established narrative.
Doctor, you don't understand what the Enlightenment is about. Is people who are subjective in their belief, people who believe differently, that are of different beliefs. People discriminated against them. They right. People that had different views of and were open to outside views. They'd be like a witch or a demon or something like that. That is the same mindset of a racist. You know what I mean? You don't really care. You're subjective in your thinking. You're not pro reasoning. You're not pro objective reality in your reasoning. It's actually a promotion of being anti. It's a promotion of being anti-fact and anti rationality, because if your mind it's fixed a certain way in a prejudiced belief about something or one or whatever, it doesn't matter whatever you say to that person, because their identity is in that thing. It's in that belief. You attacking that belief is an attack on them. They're subjective in their view. They're anti-reasoning. They're anti-bigoted in their reasoning. They're So pointing out a person that is like that, you're pointing out, you're pointing that out is actually shedding light on something that is harmful to reasoning. That's harmful to objective fact and logical reasoning. That was the whole point of racism was actually to attack reasoning. It is when people were reasoning and doing things better. How else would you divide up people? Americans were on board with each other. What were they divided along? Irrationally, race. People fighting for racism and dying for to have a racist country. You're anti-fact. You're anti-enlightenment. I mean, America was the Enlightenment. That's what America was, and race divided them in the Civil War. They were being anti-enlightenment. They didn't care about reason.
America was not the Enlightenment.
It was a great awakening. Yeah, it was.
You had basically Ben Franklin, who was over there in Europe and France, like dealing with at that time, and he came back. A lot of the Constitution is like, "Hey man, because Ben Franklin, he came back. It's like, you guys wouldn't believe it, man. I'm over there banging chicks, fucking left, right, and the other, dude. It's amazing." Obviously I'm joking, but he comes back with these ideas from the people what people in France were thinking at the time. I mean, and the Enlightenment actually started 100 years before the United States even thought about being its own thing. The Enlightenment started in the late 1600s, mid 1600s, maybe early 1600s. It'd been going on for quite some time. It's not something. It's just something that just all of a sudden, this 1 year, all of a sudden it's the Enlightenment. This is the way everybody thinks now. It's It's just with everything. It still took generations of people coming up with ideas, refining those ideas, building those ideas, making something better out of it. You know what I mean? So the idea of the Enlightenment, when it happened pretty much in all of Europe. At the same time, it happened here.
The Constitution is based off the Enlightenment.
Sort of.
Declaration of Independence, maybe.
Right. Yeah, the Constitution's a lot of it. The Constitution, a lot of it's based off the Magna Carta. That's a whole different story.
Well, you know, if we grant you that the Constitution is based off Enlightenment and critical theory is anti-Enlightenment, and critical race theory is a branch of critical theory,
pro-Enlightenment.
Then
no, you didn't. I'm like, I ranted for like an hour. You never heard anything. It was
you were just rambling and you weren't making.
Oh
any
my
sense.
God, I'm just rambling. Okay.
Maybe you were stuttering too much for me to understand your line of thinking.
No, go ahead, Nivek. Just make it hone your point. Don't give us a point and then 5 analogies or examples. It's like make the point and then make that next point. You got it, dude.
Critical race theory pointing out racism is there. People who are pro-intolerant, they're anti-reasoning. They're anti-objective reality.
That's too much of a logical jump for me. So now you're just if you talk any more past the giant logical jump that I can't figure out.
Okay. I'll keep going. I'll keep going.
Hold on. I think I might be able to clear this up. I don't think he was making a logical jump. So Nivek
is Nivek talking?
Yeah, Nivek made a first claim that said, and go ahead and make that first claim again, Nivek, and just stop.
I was saying
I'm not hearing him at all.
You
might have his volume turned down.
Yeah.
Everyone else can hear you.
Oh, there it is. There we go.
Nivek, because you said one thing and you said another, and I didn't. To me, I thought what you're laying down is like your presuppositions of your own.
I was saying people who are subjective in their thinking, in being anti-objective fact and reasoning, that is the same mindset that's sort of an intolerant mindset where people who had different beliefs, they were viewed as demons and witches, and if you're not open to different people and people that are open to different beliefs, you're not taking in information to rationalize with, to come to conclusions, because you don't care about objective reality, because you think through things of being a negative based off of a subjective view. I'm saying the same thing is with racism.
I know, and I get where you're going. Okay, so you made a statement. I just wanted like a quick.
I'm trying to say it's anti-enlightenment.
Yeah, but you said something about the idea of if somebody's a racist, they're illogical. Yeah, I don't think anybody.
I'm saying that same intolerant mindset, right? That was of the Enlightenment that was against people. That same anti-other mindset that wasn't open to other people. It was anti-fact and anti-reality. It was based off of you believing a certain thing, regardless. Where I'm saying race wasn't a factor. People would be viewed.
What about before you had the necessary facts? People weren't always just believing that this race was inferior to us because they lacked facts.
I understand. Yes.
What I'm actually getting at is that they didn't have the scientific rigor that we have to understand the similarities. And so it's not that those people were anti-fact necessarily in order to make that leap that they have the superior race, right?
Yeah. I'm completely open to discussion because I'm kind of interested in it when he brought it up. People, they have identity in things. And if you have something that is a factor and you demonize it and then it's brought forward, you're not going to be interested in taking it in as a factor because, number one, your belief in it, in something being a certain way, that is of your identity. And attacking that belief is an attack on your identity, number one. And that demonization of that factor, you're not going to be open to taking it in as a factor because it's demonized as an other. So you're not going to be open to taking different factors.
Well, let's
to rationalize with, to come to conclusions. So because I'm saying with the Enlightenment, you had that same type of mindset. You had people who had a belief, and people who thought differently, they were demonized of their beliefs because it didn't align with theirs.
I think you're going too many.
It didn't matter what they say. You're anti-fact. Okay. It didn't matter what type of information you brought because that type of information, it is demonized, and that belief that you have, it is your identity.
What do you mean by anti-fact? Like people are seeing phenomena happen in front of them and they don't believe it?
Hold on, Travis. You had a point to go and you got derailed there by that last thing Nivek said. You had a point before that.
Okay, let me explain. It. He's asking me to explain. I'll explain. All reality around you is a factor, and you're to be open to it. All reality around you is a factor of people and the environment, and you're to take it in as information to rationalize, to come to a conclusion. If your mind it sees something and not it.
Nivek, you're not listening to others or caring when they interject or say something. I'm going to go to Wise Ape. Wise Ape, when you hear this talk of critical race theory, where does your mind go? Do you know much about it?
Hey, no, I don't know much about it, and I can't really talk right now. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. No worries. How about you, Grim? Welcome. What do you think of critical race theory? We also have
Sir Nikolai.
Yeah, Sir Nikolai. What do you think of critical race theory? Or we can also go to Mark. Mark, I don't know if you've had a chance to get in yet.
No, not really.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, Mark.
So my impression from reading about it from people who actually are in it is that it's there's no real consensus on what critical race theory, what all the critical race theory people believe. They're called crits, by the way. But yeah, so but essentially, it's the belief that whether people are explicitly or implicitly racist, like they don't even know that they're racist.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. But there's bias in the system, and we need to find out what laws are causing inequities and fix them. Because there's an underlying assumption that there's nothing genetic that's causing a difference in behavior between white people and black people. Clearly, I don't necessarily buy into all of this myself, but I'm just trying to explain my understanding of it.
Right. Yep.
And yes, it is from a legal perspective, it is like studying law. What we see out, like people, like what they're saying, don't teach this in classrooms, is called critical race theory. It's not critical race theory. What's being banned in Florida, that's not critical race theory, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so I'm hearing a lot of that from different people, and it kind of reminds me when I speak to Christians. They're not true Christians. They're not true Christians. They're not true Christian. They'll cite different examples to show how they're the true Christian or that they're the most original Christian. And then the critical race theorists who think they have the right answer will have the oldest version of it and say, well, that means it's right. And then the other people will be like, no, this has been updated through. So you have all these people claiming to be the true Scotsman.
Well, I think it is important to call things what they are, and if what's being taught is not critical race theory, we shouldn't call it that. We can call it wokeism. We can call it social justice activism.
But those people teaching it believe it's critical race theory, right?
And they give it that name to lend it some credibility.
Well, not like in United States public schools. Like, this is not something that, like, I know people who are actually teachers in public schools. This is not something that has ever come up, ever. There's never been like a lesson they're teaching in class, like, all right, kids, guess what? Today we're going to learn critical race theory. Just something that never comes up. Like,
right.
It's the same
but
as,
Mark was talking about someone who was citing it, or someone was citing something as critical race theory, and then others are saying that's not it.
Right. Like one of the things that's that people are fighting back against. That's a specific example is the 1619 project, which is a counter narrative, as it would be described by critical race theory, that the United States was not founded in 1776 under the Declaration of Independence, which states that all men are created equal, but it's actually founded as a slaves. Actually, I didn't read the whole thing, but it was founded in 1619, and slavery was at the root of it, and so that's a counter narrative.
That's a good argument. Actually,
it was metaphorical in sense. It wasn't. They weren't saying it was founded with documentation or anything. They were saying it was the metaphorical.
Right, but it's a counter. It's a counter narrative. It's a counter.
It's a good argument.
That's the thing.
They didn't replace the. I mean, I have a problem with creating a counter narrative which is counterfactual, and it replaces social cohesion with racial division.
Oh no! So even in, like, you have to recognize this. Even in the current telling of anything that you would have for the traditional American explanation of all these events, do you think every piece of information is 100% factually true?
Oh no, not at all.
Obviously, right?
It is obviously factually true that the American Revolution started in 1776 with the Declaration of Independence, where our founding fathers declared independence from King
Scott,
George.
Let him finish, and then you can.
And before that, we were vassal states of the English Empire.
Are you done?
No, just wait, Nivik. Nivik, you're not listening. You're just waiting for your turn to speak.
I understand.
Try listening. No, you don't understand. You repeat that. And it's Scott's turns next if you were listening. Scott gets to go next if you were listening. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, God damn it, Nivik, you threw my fucking train of thought off.
Something Doctor was talking about. What was that first example you gave, Doctor, about?
We're talking about the Declaration of Independence being when America was founded.
Oh no, yeah. So
you could say, well, it wasn't really 1776 when we became independent, but the first time you could say maybe you want to start at the Constitution, or maybe you want to start at the pre-Constitution United States that we had, which I don't remember what it was called, but Confederated States of America or something.
Yep. So the point I was going down with that, it's the same thing with anything in history. We only remember what's necessarily written down, and we all know this idea of, like, a counter history is true, and, like, that's why I asked you this idea of, like, do you think everything that you've heard everything that you heard that's modern, that gets taught in schools for history is 100% factual? Said no, I don't.
Absolutely, absolutely not.
So
but I've seen the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like with that project, I've never actually read it, but from what I understand, that's not what it's talking about. It's not talking about the Declaration of Independence. It's talking about um, a specific like state, like the way any state sort of comes to be. Like a state is a state before it ever has papers to be a state. You know what I mean? It's like, but this is just something that people understand intuitively. But before you could even have sort of an incorporation of something, there had to be that idea beforehand. Same thing with like any corporation that has ever existed. Somebody had that idea before they incorporated that idea. And you can say, okay, well, the beginning of this is when we incorporated. That's not necessarily true. The beginning of it is when you guys came up with that idea and you started working through it. And I think that's sort of the idea, from what I understand, that project is working on. I don't, I honestly don't know any specific points, but on a factual basis of understanding history, using that just philosophical framework, that makes a shitload of sense to me, right? Without even knowing what they come to, if they're just using that philosophical framework, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Right, but I mean, you just have to use their own philosophical framework, which they publish, which is that their doctrine is to create counter narratives, and you can see that all men were created equal. And we have a physical document which says we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and that is counterfactual to their claim that America is systemically racist. And so they have to create a counter narrative to that factual documentation of what the zeitgeist is of America.
Two seconds, Nivik, before go ahead, Scott. Ahead. You can finish.
I would say with that factual documentation at that same time, when that all was put into place, that's the reason the Electoral College was put into place, because people in the South wanted to have their slaves count for 3/5 of a human being,
2/3 or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. So like, I mean, they're like even in that, like, that's not. I wouldn't use that as an example.
Before we go back to you, Nivik, I want to check in with Nikolai. Nikolai, do you have anything to add on critical race theory, or anything you've heard here that you want to weigh in on? If you do, just hit the unmute button. If you're new to Discord, and should open up your mic. And if you're not ready now, feel free to just jump in whenever you want. But yeah, Nivik.
America was based on an idea of in this revolution, and all men are created equal, and it didn't end there in the revolution. It transferred over into the Civil War in that battle, in that ideological battle, in where it was, where at that point it was won, and where you can see it is a good argument to say. That's when America, was. That's when it began.
Because when it became a nation, right? It's when it became a nation of people that all held the same values.
Well,
not just a state. America is not just a state. Up until the Civil War, it was just a state. And there were more than one nation that did not all hold the same values. And then after the Civil War, this idea that
hold on, my phone's
spread
dying
everywhere.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm making a little bit of a leap there.
My phone went. You just cut off. Say that again.
But I'm going with Nivik here.
No, I'm just saying that.
Before the Civil War, you had the South. Before you had the Civil War, you had the South, which believed in slavery and monarchy, and And that was settled during the Civil War, and since then we've all been one nation that essentially holds the same moral foundation, similar moral foundations, that all men are created equal. At least as a nation, we do. I'm sure there's some individuals that disagree.
Yeah.
Some people they never moved on from that
point. I would agree. A lot of their sticking points, though, right?
Well, I mean, the most important moral questions, I think, are solved by that Civil War.
Abortion. That's a tough. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the big one.
The ideological battle that it had, starting with the revolution, and ended in the civil.
Right. So my philosophical problem with critical race theory is that I've identified the game that they're playing.
No, they're pointing out reality.
They're not. The game that critical race theory is not to point out reality. Critical race theory specifically says that one cannot have an objective knowledge of reality. So the idea that critical theory is pointing out reality is fallacious, because they're saying there is no reality. It's only individual truths of.
I'm not following that. That's I can't pick. I can't come. What do you mean they can't? They can't be. So if you point out a person that's racist, that's not pointing reality. I don't.
Critical theory. Critical theory. Critical theory. What they're being critical of is is critical theory. What they're being critical of is the notion that objective knowledge exists. We cannot. Critical theory says we cannot have objective knowledge. There is no objective knowledge. It's only personal viewpoints.
Well, the person who's racist is the person who thinks subjective.
So it's ridiculous to think that someone practicing critical theory is pointing out objective knowledge.
The subjective thinking is a person that is bigoted. The reality is a person that is using critical race theory to point out a person for being a bigot. That's just reality.
What I do want to point out, though, just real quick, like critical theory really only maps onto social interaction. I thought, like, it has nothing to do with like objective reality.
No, it maps onto science. It maps onto science. It maps onto science.
It's an approach to social philosophy that focuses on reflective assessment and critique of society and culture in order to reveal and challenge power structures. The origins in sociology and literary criticism. It argues that social problems are influenced and created more by societal structures and cultural assumptions than by individual psychological factors.
Structural determinism. Structural determinism.
And maintaining the ideology as the principal obstacle to human liberation. So it's basically saying it argues that social problems are influenced and created more by societal structures and cultural assumptions than by individual or psychological factors. That's what I always thought.
Hey Scott, the Enlightenment thinkers, they were drafting the Constitution with the founding fathers, right?
Well, Kant was a very, very famous Enlightenment thinker, but he's one of the first guys you would consider came up with the idea of critical theory. So he was like when he came up with it, it's not like that's what I'm saying. Like critical theory doesn't disregard enlightenment. It's trying to take the idea of enlightenment to social structures. So it's not saying anything about like the greater ideology or assumptions that we've made with our place in the world regarding reason and experience. It's just saying, okay, so now we know reason, experience. So let's go further from there. And for me, that's the way I've always said it. Might be wrong, but
I mean, it starts from denying that objective knowledge is possible.
No.
Not all crits deny objective knowledge.
Yeah, it's just there might be some numbskulls out there who might say that, but like Kant definitely when he came up with critical when he was like the first guy to start thinking about critical theory, he was not objective reality. That was not at all what was going on.
Could I give an example of critical race theory in action?
Sure. Let's hear it.
So, I have a friend of mine, PhD in art history. She comes deeply from the art world and liberal world. And I sat down to have a conversation with her on these kinds of subjects. And she was telling me about, if you tour most of the museums around the United States, they all want the same pieces of art that come from the same sources. And it just so happens, for historical reasons, that all these pieces of art, like the vast majority of every piece of art that museums care about, come from white people. That's not to say that there aren't any really talented artists who aren't white. It's just that's the kind of art museums want. And it's part of her desire to inspire museums to broaden their search for what kind of art they bring on, so that, just by the non-racist structural how things have been, if you are black, you are not just automatically excluded from being sought after by museums. Now, tell me if that's anti-reason. Tell me if that's unreasonable. Tell me if that's reasonable. What do you guys think about that?
What's the highest a Basquiat's ever gone for? Like 50 million, right? Obviously, he was dead, but
Well,
still
you can't just use
there, right? I know.
a counter.
Yeah, I
No,
know.
that's right. No, critical race theory is all about, yes, you can't just use a counter narrative.
Yeah, well, when I know what you're talking about, but I do think that the problem is in the art world, typically what people are looking for are going to be classics, right? It's going to be something like that's Picasso and before. That's where they're really looking. They're going to spend a shitload of money. People will buy stuff from new artists. It's not going to garner anywhere that same kind of money until you get to like Basquiat. Like, agreed, he had to die before that happened. Banksy, same thing. Like, he can pull a tremendous amount of money off a piece of art. But most artists, yeah, that's not the case. I don't think that has anything to do with race. That just has to do with the art. Motherfucker. This is, yeah, like I studied art in college, so I have some understanding of the world.
There's some dude
to say that. Just I'm not an expert at all. Like I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, well, here's another perspective for you. The people who made that art that you're referring to as all white didn't refer to themselves that way. That's a label that you put on them after the art was created. The French Impressionists would not have identified with Italian or German artists of the same period.
Very true.
You're just labeling them all as white.
But I agree. I don't even like the labels white and black. But that aside, there are plenty of artists who are still alive today, who are producing art, who are being bought up. I can point to one on the wall of my local art museum, blue panel. And these, like, across the board, if you were looking for people who are doing great art, who are black, who are having their art bought up by museums, you might find some. But if you look at all the people who are being bought, the vast majority of them aren't. And why is that?
I think it's because those people who are getting bought probably are. I would probably bet dollars to donuts that their parents have some sort of money or have some sort of connections.
The vast majority of artists aren't black.
Money on.
As soon as we start getting into the art world, I hit conspiracy because it's all a scam to move money around. But whatever.
Can I add something?
It's fucking brilliant, dude. It's a lot of good folks.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah,
man. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, this is Nikolai. I just wanted to kind of to Mark's point. I'm fortunate not to have any kids right now, so I don't have any kids in school that are being directly affected by this CRT thing. But obviously, it's affecting our culture, and it's going to affect any kids or relatives that we know. But it does look like to me, from a very, very far away outside perspective and very new to this topic in general, that there are, it seems to me, at least from my, light perspective, that there are some people behind CRT that have how do you say it? They have a heart or a desire to
ulterior motive.
Well, I think
They have an axe to grind.
There's at least two types of people or philosophies that I'm seeing. I'm seeing some people that are like bleeding heart folk that do want there to be more acknowledgement of African American history, African American empowerment, right? The history of blacks, African Americans to be reflected. Certain things that aren't talked about as much, such as something I heard about recently. Killings of African Americans in a good number in Oklahoma, right? About 100 years ago, right?
Oh, you're talking about that. You're talking about the Oklahoma massacre, dude. That was
correct.
a shitload of fucking
right.
dude.
So what I'm saying is, though, there are some. It seems like there are some people that want to encourage that, but then it seems like there are some people with ulterior additional motives that would like to use CRT to usurp or overpower certain power structures that are in place, like certain politicians that are white colored, they're light skinned, right? Certain organizations that are run by predominantly white people, they'd like to see overpowered. So it doesn't look like to me that everybody that follows CRT necessarily has terrible motives, but there are definitely some, it seems like, that are coming to light that do, even if they don't say it outright. So I think it's kind of nuanced.
Can I ask a question?
Well, exactly. That was sort of my point. That really at that point it has nothing to do with CRT. It more has to do with like fucking. And like I'm part of the WWE or I'm part of the WCW, fucking whatever wrestling, and it's like we're against each other and fucking that's all it comes down to. It like the very notion of CRT has lost all meaning at this point. To me, it seems like in the realm of the way we talk about it here, or people talk about it on the news, or the way it's talked about anywhere. It has nothing to do with what's actually going on with that academic idea, and more along the lines of like, well, I feel it's saying this, and I feel it's saying this, and that's so it's either really good or it's really bad, and that's to me that's the craziest part of this whole fucking thing, right? Like how in the world do we have something that's like can you imagine people fighting over the idea of gravity? Something that we have just as little understanding of as probably critical race theory. The best experts in the world have no idea what's going on with gravity. And if you imagine there are people on the news every night fighting about different types of gravity, and this is what gravity means, and it's this and this. Guaranteed, we'd be on here in this channel talking about like, well, what does fucking gravity mean? Like that's fucking weird, isn't it? How fucking strange is that as just like a rational being to understand that's the way things work?
Yeah, you're acknowledging something that's
it's
there.
The fucking weirdest thing.
we're having this long
acknowledging
conversation about something that's imaginary.
It's being caught up in this thing that like, man, just so weird to me.
It's strange that the conversation is long on something that is, that's supposed to be so simple and obvious. You have people insist.
See, but what you're saying is simple and obvious is definitely not what Doctor is thinking is simple and obvious, and that's the fucking point.
Yeah. Think about this. Think of it in terms of a game. Someone mentioned the Oklahoma City massacre just now.
Yep.
So I acknowledge that people get into groups, and they have throughout all of history. And when these groups come into conflict and there's a power struggle between them, one of the groups quite often massacres the other group.
Yep.
There have been many of these instances in history. You could talk about the Oklahoma City massacre. In American history, when I was a kid, they talked about the Boston massacre, which was one of the points that drove us to coagulating into a group that wanted to fight the Revolutionary War.
Israelites
you could talk about
Canaanites.
Yeah, Israelites and Canaanites. You can talk about the genocide in Rwanda. Now you can talk about the Armenian genocide, where the Young Turks took out the Armenians. You can talk about the Holocaust. But in all these cases, take a step back. When a person is using the anecdote of a massacre, and in this case it's clear, massacres are anecdotes. There's a lot that happens. These are things that happen all the time. We don't like massacres. Massacres are bad, okay? But when there's a person that's using the narrative of a massacre of people who that person is loosely related to, in order to shame a person who is only loosely related to the people who did the massacre in the first place, then that's a game where that person is trying to gain permanent moral authority over you, so that they can invert the scenario and become the dominant one in the
when you fight for
scenario.
justice, if you fight for justice, you're really the oppressed plotting to become the oppressor, right? Is that it?
No.
Yes,
No. I'm saying take a step back and look at the game that people are playing to try to manipulate you. Now, I have no. Okay, Oklahoma City massacre. It sucks that there was an Oklahoma City massacre. I acknowledge that. Okay. There is nobody in my family heritage who was present in Oklahoma City at the massacre, and there's no one in your family heritage who's related to the people who were massacred. But people are going to bring it up, and they're going to say, "Oh, look at these poor people that were massacred, and therefore I have to give something to you." And all groups do this in order. It's a kind of political game that people play to get leverage for their narrative, so that they can get a political advantage over another group of people.
And the flip side of
so
that
I'm just saying
people have people
take a
go
step
against
back. I'm just saying take a step back and realize that there's all kinds of games people play to try to manipulate you into giving them what they want. And some things you should feel guilty about, and there's other things you should not. That's all I'm saying.
When you have fairness that's going to a marginalized some going to the margin, to going to a marginalized, that's a beneficial thing, because any type of potential predicament you might be in, a person that's marginalized can see that could potentially happen with them, and they're not going to go along with it because of that reason, because it means whatever happens to you could potentially happen to them. So, a, a lot of the fighting for slavery wasn't about being a bleeding heart liberal. It was about the ideology of inequality. The ideology of equality was being fought with them, of what America revolted against. It was a fight that going back for centuries, that was within white culture, but it divided people in thinking, ignorantly along the lines of race, in destroying America.
What I'm saying is,
it was used by elites.
There's nobody in my family.
It was used by elites to hurt America.
Anywhere.
It was bad.
There's no one in my family, anywhere in my family tree, who engaged in enslaving other people, as far back as anyone can look. So why the fuck are you mad at me?
It's the ideology. It's the ideological mindset.
Explain why you're mad at me for slavery. Explain why I have to give any shit about what happened to your ancestors. There's nobody in my family tree, as far back as anyone can look, who was a slave owner. And there were people that died freeing the slaves. Why should I feel guilty at all about what people who are not related to me did? You're not guilty.
You're still making it personal. And
you're not guilty. You're not guilty. I don't know. You keep saying you.
I can't get an edge word. I just made an explanation in how the battle, it was an ideology it wasn't about blacks. It was about the ideology, and you're still talking about, like, why should I have an issue with blacks? I mean, the ideology of what benefited you, of America, you are benefiting off of that ideology right now.
So are you. Welcome to the club.
But you're saying like why should I care about
you're
the ideology of America?
You are too.
In America.
You are too. Welcome to the club.
Yeah. So yeah, I acknowledge that ideology of what America stands for. But you're still caught up in pointing at, well, these folks and those folks. And it had nothing to originally do with these folks and those folks. It was just used.
I don't need somebody comes up with a narrative that says I should feel guilty about something that someone else did that I'm not related to. I don't need to feel guilty about it. I can take a step back and say, no, those people were not related to me. They did not have the same ideology as me. I have no reason to feel guilty.
That type of mindset of ideology of equality versus inequality, if it wasn't one, then you would be persecuted. You would be burnt as a witch. That's what you'd be. That's what will happen to you.
Why would I be burned as a witch? I don't go around the forest cohorting with the devil.
Well, who you are right now, you couldn't be that person.
Why not?
Well, I mean, if it's an intolerant society, I mean, and if you're of a different race, then you would be persecuted. You might even be an indentured slave. You might be put into that. I don't know.
Right, but my ancestors fought for a tolerant society, and they made that a reality. So you should be happy that my ancestors did that.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. You're saying like, but I mean, like, there are people who. No. I'm talking about of the mind. I'm not talking about of race. This thing of race, you're too caught up in the identity of race.
No, I'm not.
See. You know, when you
I don't identify with a race.
When you have a bunch of people and they're fighting for an idea, what do? You magically turn them into a different color, right? And you have them then go against each other. But you can't do it magically. So what do? You just dump a bunch of others in there, and you'll divide them along their ideals that they're fighting for.
That doesn't make any sense.
Listening, but I gotta go. Good night, all.
Good night.
Acts were used to destroy the country and dividing it along race. And it was working. But good thing America won against the Confederacy. But we're still not out of the woods yet, because what do we have? We have people storming the Capitol with Confederacy flags. But yet it's supposed to be behind us. Yeah, right.
Well, you're speaking in the past tense. You're speaking in the present tense about something that's in the past tense that actually is behind us.
Past isn't behind us, because you have people kicking down the Capitol door with Confederacy flags in their hand.
You don't have that.
You didn't see an insurrection? What do you think that's all about?
You're talking about something in the past.
Well, no, I hear what Nivek's saying. What Nivek's saying is factually, there is factual evidence. Most of us have seen the pictures that there were people holding Confederate flags. Whether they identified with that or whether they were planted there, those are side topics that we get into. But there were people at the Capitol during the siege with Confederate flags at the stairs. We've
coincidentally
seen those
had the same lineage. Who had the same lineage? Coincidentally.
Well, I don't know that part, but I am saying that there were flags there. So there's something about that symbol, about it represents that are still present today. And that's part of why we're talking about some of these topics, because there is still something present as far as those ideas, as far as those symbols being shared, being walked around publicly today.
And what happened during the recent times, if that could have happened in the past of that being done, that would have been done, but it wasn't accomplished. And people were making a cross like, hey, we had an effing civil war and they didn't manage to do that. And all of a sudden that for the first time in America's history, that was done. How fucked up is that? And the general said that. He says he wants to understand, like, what made people do that. I mean, like, I want to understand the factors within the country, because I remember Matt Gaetz questioning him, and he was like, you know what, I'm actually interested in understanding, like, what drove people to do some shit like that.
You don't understand what drove people to do that?
Well, people said, well, I'm just saying, like, the issue with race isn't in the past, is all.
Do you think that the people storming the Capitol had anything with race in their mind when they did it? Was that about race? To you? I know you weren't there storming the castle.
Well, I don't know. That's why that's the whole point of the theory. You look and you take in facts. You make you try to come to answers. But people don't want to. People's like, we shouldn't do anything. We just get off of that.
Right. Like I'm saying, the problem that I have with critical race theory,
okay,
is the same as the problem that I have with critical theory. Is that It forces you to take something that has nothing to do with race and look at it through the lens of race from the point of view of somebody who was not there and make a judgment about it regardless of the factual evidence of the case.
Okay, so you're saying if you're looking for it, you'll find it, kind of thing.
The people that were storming the Capitol were there because they did not like the results of the election, and they did not feel like the laws of their state were followed in the conduct of the election, and they wanted there to be an investigation into said misconduct. The investigation did not happen, and they were there to petition their government to follow the due process of law as outlined in the Constitution and legislated by the legislature of the United States of America, the Congress, to let's just say they wanted Vice President Pence to count the dueling electors' votes, not the primary electors' votes, and they wanted the House of Representatives, at least one senator, at least one representative,
I get all of that. I was
in the Congress to challenge the results
what do you think it was based
of
off
the election.
I was talking about the Confederacy. I was talking about the Confederacy flag, and that was about race. With the battle of the Confederacy.
Well, the Confederate flag is about geography.
Yeah, when people use the Confederate flag today, I don't think they're necessarily invoking white supremacy or racism. I don't think there's a bunch of racists at NASCAR.
But the whole point of the Civil War of the Confederacy was about race.
Yeah, but if you ask the people waving the flags, they say it was about states' rights, and we can't have that conversation. And so I think it's more. I think it's more about the ethos of the South and the how would you say, the independence, the difference in culture of the South from the North. And
the whole reason of the secession was stated in each state that it was slavery.
I agree, but I'm making the claim
the word slavery was in there in each of the secession articles of secession.
I agree.
And it was in one paragraph of at least 12 paragraphs in each of the articles of secession.
And I can agree that during the Civil War, the South was doing that because of race. But I'm making the claim that people today who wave the Confederate flag do not do it because of race.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Richard. Like, obviously, you guys are right about the history of the state. Like, it was for states' rights, but the states' rights to keep slavery. So I ignore it alone. But I think what's kind of more
one of the other rights was the right to secession. One of the other rights was to print their own money as well.
Yeah, well, but the important one we're talking about is slavery. Like, I agree with you on the historical point, but I think Richard's point, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that what matters more is the intent in which they fly it now. Because just because that's what the Confederate flag meant back during the Civil War, that doesn't mean that's what the people who are flying it now mean. Like, and I think that's like the.
So why would you be willing to accept that you have evidence for why they fly it now, and it might be that they flew it for the same reason back then? And you're right that they don't fly it out of racism now.
That's literally not possible. You could not.
So can you point to a appointed time when the reason for flying the Confederate flag changed?
A specific time? No, because cultural things don't happen like overnight. It's kind of a slow change.
No,
but
I mean, I think
literally any single person you ever saw holding a flag, I guarantee you, it'd be a minute percent the people that said they did it because they believe in the Confederacy's cause. Like, if you want to do the research, go take the polls if you like. But I think
if you went to if you were a hypothetical person that was able to fly back to 1862 and meet a guy that was in the Confederate Army, then his job was to hold the Confederate flag. If you went up to and asked him, why are you holding that flag? Do you think he would say, for slavery? Or do you think he would say,
not,
well, because I'm from the South and I love the South and this is a symbol of the South, which is exactly the same reason that somebody would do it today.
Historical context of that. I mean, I agree. I think you're right, and I see the parallel you're trying to make. The problem is, I flew back to 1862, and the historical context is vastly different.
I'm just asking you what you think would happen. What do you think would happen if you flew back to 1862?
No, I agree.
Do you think anybody? Do you think a guy holding the Confederate flag that's his only job in the army is to hold the flag and wave it, and when the general wants to charge, he dips the flag forward, and when the general wants to retreat, he waves the flag to get people to retreat. That's his job. He's the flag guy. He's the color guard.
But
you go and you ask him, you think he's gonna say he's holding it for slavery back in 1862?
Well, he would say he's probably, in my personal theorizing, and again, this is unfalsifiable, so take it with a grain of salt. I would probably say he's doing it for Southern pride. Sure, he's doing it because he wants to be free from those damn Northerners. Now, the quiet part out loud is the reason he wants to be free is so he can. And I wouldn't be surprised if they say he wants to fight too.
Do you think the guy holding the flag has any slaves?
Probably not. But he probably believes that there's a fundamental right to own slaves because that's technically what a lot of people in the South believed at the time. They thought they were property.
Isn't this critical theory that you're going down right now, though?
No, I don't know. He's trying to tell me
that I'm saying to Doctor, like right now, Doctor's going down.
I'm trying to use your own damn methods against you is what I'm doing.
Yeah. Okay, well, I know that, and let me jump ahead real quick because I see where you're going. You're right. He probably wouldn't say it's for slavery. Unfortunately, that parallel doesn't really hold water because you've changed a rather massive factor. The fact I'm in 1862
I didn't change anything.
Yeah, you did, because in 1862, even if the guy doesn't explicitly say he's holding it for slavery, he's at war with the North, knowing the reason for war is because the North wants to free the slaves. He knows that. And even if his reason that he says is Southern pride, historical context actually matters. No person in 2021 thinks that holding the
Emancipation Proclamation wasn't written until 2 years into the war.
Okay,
yeah, but the war was spawned from the Fugitive Slave Act, Dred Scott decision.
Yep.
So that's where it really comes from.
But it was a bit unclear as to why the North was fighting the war, because like a big thing.
Why do you think the guy holding the flag is fighting the war?
Well, the North was fighting for states' rights. You know, that's what the Fugitive Slave Act was.
You're framing the actions of the guy that's holding a flag with your collectivist mindset. The North was fighting for this. The South was fighting for this. That's your collectivist mindset framing everybody's actions.
I just
from
asked you a question,
point of view.
Doctor's not hearing me.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Why were blacks targeted by the KKK after the Civil War? If slavery was done and it wasn't, it's not an issue no more. Move on.
No,
but
we never said that. We're not talking about that at all.
Because blacks were targeted by the KKK because the KKK doesn't like black people.
Correct. Fair enough.
Yeah,
I have to go, unfortunately, but I would just say this. No, seriously, like I hopped on because I thought the topic was cool. I guess
it's a cool topic.
Right. Yeah, no, I like it.
Society, talk about.
Let him talk.
Nivek, let Delta finish. Come on, man.
Just real quick. Sorry, mate. I'm not trying to be difficult. All I'd say is that they might both give the answer Southern pride. Fine, I concede that point completely. But the thing is, what Southern pride meant during the Civil War in 1862 is very different than what Southern pride means in 2021 today. I think it's patently ridiculous to attribute the same motive. But technically, they would probably both say Southern pride, so I concede on that point. I'm just saying those two phrases mean different things. Sorry to end on a point and just kind of run. I feel like that's kind of weak, but I actually have to go eat food. So I'll see you guys.
It's all good. Makes sense.
Later.
See ya.
Yeah, I mean, like,
well, after the civil rights movement, there was a switch between parties.
2 seconds. I want to. Have we heard from Jolly yet on critical race theory?
No, we have not.
You mean Snowy?
Oh yeah, I know it's Snowy's being clever. Hey, Snowy, Jolly.
Hey, how you going?
What's
What's
what
that?
do you think?
Give
Give us your thoughts. Give us your thoughts on critical race theory.
I'm not actually sure what that is.
Okay.
So maybe someone can educate me, and then I'll respond.
Just go to Doolittle. He's the objective god on this topic.
Yeah. I would say do your own research. It's such a loaded.
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
a
thing
loaded.
at this
It's totally
point.
loaded.
It's about as weighed down with no true Scotsman as you will ever get.
As you can possibly get.
Is it like as much as God?
I want to know what Nivek thinks. He's my point of research, to be honest.
He's been hot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you my.
No,
take
I want to
on-
know what you think, Snowy, of racism. What do you think?
We're not talking about racism.
No,
it's critical
that's
race
what
theory.
I'm talking about.
Nivek, you can run a conversation on racism. I would love for you to do that.
No, I want to hear Snowy. Snowy, answer my question.
My question about racism?
Yeah, what do you think about
it? I think it exists.
What?
I think it exists.
Go on.
Go on.
I'm interested.
It's existed for a while, and it does exist.
Yeah, define exist.
It's a Monty Python sketch.
When Nivek's voice starts cracking, he's getting into it, man.
Yeah. Okay. So wait. What do I think about racism?
Snowy, go on.
Okay, I'll go on. It says, I think it's sucks, and it existed, and it probably exists. Any more elaborations needed from me? Or?
So you mean there are people out there?
Yeah, I think there's people out there
that are racist.
Hold on, like that is the definition of a straw man. If you ever saying, so what you're saying is, come on now, Nivek, just
in society?
like so Snowy asked you a question.
I'm talking to Snowy here.
I know,
Snowy,
but I know where you're going. You're trying to like lay out a thing, just like tell. Just
No,
say
let me just. Okay.
what you're trying to say.
Yes, Snowy.
Yes, Nivek.
Okay, so if you have people in society that are that, and people make up society.
Yes, they do.
So, I mean that means that there are elements of society that is that.
Yes. What? Hang on. Wait. Let me start again. So there's people that make up society, and society has people like that. So there's elements of society.
Yeah, there's elements of racism. So there's society. There's factors of racism
that are
society.
racist. So in society, you have racist groups.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm sure there. I mean, there's all kinds of freaks out there. I mean, yeah. But what are you trying to dig at though? Like, what do you think that I think the whole society's racist? Is that what you're asking me, or?
No, I didn't say anything about the whole society being racist. I'm just saying that you have people that are that if you have people that are racist and they're of society, then you have factors. I don't know to what degree, but it's that element's there. That's all.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's there, is just to be acknowledged, and that's all it is. You're just acknowledging something that is there, and there's not one person on the planet that wouldn't say that racism don't exist. So. We're having an argument of acknowledging something that is already acknowledged.
The critical race theory.
I don't get the
no
argument.
Racism?
No, I'm saying acknowledging racism everybody you ask, if there are people that are racist out there, everybody will say, a large number, like a majority would say, yeah. So if it's out there,
Well, I mean, it's
and
self-evident. I mean,
acknowledging it, I don't see what's wrong with acknowledging it. It's already acknowledged anyway. So we're having this conversation.
wait, so who's not acknowledging it?
No, but we're having a conversation about something as if we're not having a conversation about something that. I mean, we're acknowledging. We're talking about not acknowledging and acknowledging. You know what I mean? It's the conversation that we're having. We're having a conversation about acknowledging something while acknowledging it.
So hang on. So can you just flesh out your version of the critical race theory?
Critical race theory is just acknowledging the factor of race. That's it. And
non-controversial theory then.
But people if I'm saying if you ask everybody if there's racism, they'll say yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what is the theory again? Like, can someone actually
critical race theory is just acknowledging the factors of race in society and how it plays out in society.
It's the application of application of critical theory to racism.
Yeah, and it really does, like, guys, critical race theory, really, like, it's the only place it's actually ever applied, from what I can see, has to do with law and people trying to understand, like, the way laws work, and if there is, like, any sort of
systemic
racial implications to these laws, and that's what they're looking at, really. I've never seen anything that really dives too far off that point. This is something that was brought up to me tonight, and I've literally been like, I'll go on mute and just like read for like 30 minutes, and like I'm not seeing anything that points to anything other than it
what about Biden giving money to farmers based off of their race?
That's what Trump did.
What?
That's been a USDA policy since like
has it?
Carter, yeah.
We should probably get rid of that. Am I wrong?
What are you talking about?
Because I saw a story where Biden was like giving money to farmers based off of their race, so he give more to POCs than
you're specifically talking about that one thing that
blew up. He says, you know what? When Trump was in office, you know how much I've been ass raped. You know what I mean? In being out.
Who's ass raped?
I'm talking about how black farmers. The policy that Trump made, he put him on the outside of things. He
did, like, yeah. I mean, if you look at that's true.
And he was ranting about that, and he's saying it's funny. Nobody came when that was happening to me. All of a sudden,
that's a pretty specific claim. So Trump was ass raping black farmers. I mean, that's a pretty specific claim. I think you should bring some evidence. At least to make that concrete. At least to make that concrete.
I was watching a YouTube video with a farmer. He was just ranting about how unfairly he was.
He was getting ass raped.
Like I mean, this is something that is actually. I mean, if you look at the numbers, it is relatively true. So Trump did run a program where a bunch of farmers got subsidies. Most of those subsidies ended up going to like big ag companies. But when you broke it down, the amount of minority farmers that got any sort of subsidy from what Trump pushed through was like at 1%. So it was like a crazy disproportional amount of subsidies to people on the lower end. And
I'm sorry, Scott. I still don't believe you. I need more evidence. I need lots and tons more evidence on that.
Well, I mean, you can look this up. I'm not saying people are ass raped or anything.
Well, when you look for things,
specifically, I'm bringing up like information.
You're finding racism, so you're looking through a goggles, is what you're doing, Scott. You're looking through a goggle lens.
I'm bringing up information.
Yeah, is there any class of people that got more than 1% of the subsidies?
White farmers got like a drastic portion. But it's also because white farmers happen to be most of the farmers who are part of big ag deals, right? So all those subsidies went to farmers that were working for big ag.
Right. So the relevant.
Let me get this right.
Yeah, no, I don't know if any of you guys know how farming actually works. I can give you a quick rundown.
The relevant breakdown is not black versus white. It's big ag versus family farms.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, that's all we need to say. So I mean, that's the relevant breakdown. And critical race theory says, no. You need to look at this in terms of race. Black people are getting fucked up the ass, and that's not how the decision was made.
Holy shit! It sounds like
because poor white people are getting fucked too.
Poor white people are getting fucked too. There's a small minority of people.
Though.
A small minority of people that are getting all the money. And it's got nothing to do with whether you're black.
So let me steel man the critical race perspective there, because the critical race theorists would say that the
critical
only
race
reason
theory has nothing to do with any of this. The critical race theory only accounts for laws.
You could analyze farming through a critical race theory lens.
No, you can't, because critical race theory literally only deals with structural things based within law. I mean, that's the entire point of it. I know people are like using a broad brush and saying critical race theory stands for all these things. Same thing, like any concept,
Really?
if you stretch that concept out past what it actually means, yeah, people are going to tie all sorts of crazy stuff into it, right?
So someone like Kimberly
I've been reading
Crenshaw.
this for like 2 hours.
So let me try and dialogue with that. So let's take Kimberly Crenshaw. I watched her TED Talk on intersectionality. I would call her a critical race theorist. Okay. So in her TED Talk, she brought up the example of a person applying for a job, right? So this person is black. They have a lower likelihood of getting the job. They're also a woman. They're also trans, and she layers this. Explains how it's an intersectional identity. And she says this is how we need to consider, for example, people applying for jobs. Now, that isn't in the context of law, I would say. So is that a mal or a misapplication of critical race theory by Kimberly Crenshaw?
Yeah. To me, it seemed like a different thing. To me, that's sort of along the same idea of like you had somebody like Richard Spencer saying like, oh well, like we should be like limiting people based on their race or something like that. Like has nothing to do with like any sort of academic study. At that point, you're just making some sort of proclamation, right? It's not. It's not any in any way relational based, right? So if you know what I'm talking about,
I want to hear what Nivek has to say about this.
Yeah.
What was that? Sorry about that. I stepped away. Sorry. About what?
About what Richard was saying and Scott.
Well, he didn't hear it, so unfortunately, he can't comment. And so I would just ask you, Scott, then, because this what I described Crenshaw describing is quite a common thing nowadays to make that sort of analysis. So if we're not calling it CRT, what should we call it?
Yes, yeah. I don't exactly know, but to me it seems like it is something that's actually different. So all of a sudden you're going from talking about specific laws and how laws work and and understanding that. And that's something people have been doing in law school forever, to all of a sudden talking about, well, this is the way things should be. So now you're going into the realm of philosophy. I don't know what it should necessarily be called. I don't necessarily think it's beneficial to call it the same thing, just for the mere fact that there's going to be a lot of confusion between that. People will take advantage of that confusion to try and sway people's opinion either way. I just don't think that's the necessarily best way to go about it.
Okay, well, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, not just to add to this topic. So, because Nivek was asking for a source. The Counter, which is a website that talks about American food systems as well as topics around American food and agriculture. That's like the focus of many of their articles, as well as some things
That
related
was
to.
Doctor that I was asking for a source of
Right.
of the farmers.
Correct. And so so this source, the
like
Counter, they had a piece that was done in July of 2019 about Trump and the funding, and it said the Environmental Working Group documented that the program to fund the farmers disproportionately helped wealthy landowners. So that was the focus. So there was another organization that came out and said, "Oh yeah, well, disadvantaged people like blacks have been really negatively affected because a lot of them are poor. But the reason that a lot of them and other minorities were disproportionately funded is because they were poor, mainly, firstly, not because of their skin color or race."
Oh, so the law didn't say because of skin color or race. It said it was because
Correct.
they.
Yeah, it reads here in the article that the Environmental Working Group documented that the program disproportionately helped fund wealthy landowners and that it deepened the disadvantages of minority farmers. So that includes blacks, that includes certain Asian
So that was just a
ethnicities,
coincidence.
No, well, it's not a coincidence. Like this is called America.
Is the argument?
That is the argument, that it could be a coincidence. That seems to be the argument.
Well, no.
Yeah, that's
not the argument I'm
how
making.
things are. It's
No,
just
so let me lay out the argument, because it's obviously affecting blacks, disproportionately because they're more poor on average. Like, I can concede that point fine. But then I would make a point that there are also white farmers and farmers of other races who are in the same position as poor black farmers. Why
let me make a different argument.
Well,
I get how that works.
This is where you always get to the point that I bring when we start talking about generational effects. So if 100 years ago a black farmer was prevented from being able to buy land, how much of an effect does that have on his great grandchildren? To me, it seems like that has a drastic, and I think that's the biggest thing that we're dealing with, this ripple from actual real like systemic racism. I don't know how you deal with that ripple. I don't know.
Yeah, so let me put a different spin on it for you, which might you have to take a step back. There's always going to be a race which is poorer than the other races. If you were to go in any society anywhere in any imaginable universe and rank the races from richest to poorest, there will always be one at the bottom.
Yep, even if it's only by a cunt hair. Yeah.
Okay. All government policies that were enacted in this time period were not enacted with respect to race. They were enacted with respect to helping the people out who are going to have the most impact on the economy as a whole. So they're trying to put the smallest amount of money at work to give the greatest benefit to society. And the way that is done most effectively is to give it to the people who are the most effective with money. And the people who are the most effective with money are the richest. It doesn't matter if you're black or white or what. The way that money works is that the people that are the most effective with money are going to be the richest. Now, you can argue that point, but there's no such thing as a policy where government gives money to the people that they think are going to be the most effective with money, and at the same time helps the people that are the worst with money, which are the people that are poor.
So, well, here's the interesting thing with the way economies work, though. The people who you'd say are the most efficient with money, these are people who are going to tend to save more. They're spending less money,
Not
farmers,
though. Not farmers though.
Yeah, not farmers. Just in general, like if we're talking about
we're talking about farmers. We're talking about people that pretty much take all their capital and they employ it on making their land more productive.
Scott, the argument of generational wealth, and where you affect people in the past, in how that determines where they'd be in the present. So if you do make policies, it would more be harsh towards one than the other based off of those acts that were done in the past.
Well, that's
his argument.
The point that I always try to make, where I say I can't really see like systemic racism now. Like I do think we're dealing with the ripples of it. We're dealing with the effects from our past, and that's.
It's like you kneecap somebody in the past, and then you put laws to be normal, and it's like, hey, everything's fine. What are you talking about?
Yeah, when I'm like everybody understands, like we're dealing with things from the past. It's the same way like the British people still hate French people because it's something that's been going on for 700 years. Like fuck you guys, And then people still have these like weird things. Same thing with like the Hatfields and McCoys. Even though like issues were resolved, they still have this grudge against each other for some reason.
And America is very young.
America's
extremely young in comparison, and what we're talking about is going to go on for a couple more centuries, maybe I'll say 700 centuries out of it.
Like
700 centuries.
Yeah, dude, even
That's a lot.
America will be long gone.
I mean 700 years. 700 years. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm right with that.
No. America will be long gone in 7 centuries, my friend.
Yeah. The next thing that's going to happen is there will most likely be a one world government. That's probably going to be the next.
I don't know. The biggest world government that's ever been made was Genghis Khan, right? He just barely made it across Asia.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think there's such a thing as a policy which, when framed properly, doesn't appear to be racist. Or I could say when framed improperly.
No, I was talking about Scott's argument, and where you kneecap people in the past of where of generational wealth is passed.
You can't kneecap people in the past.
And then you say, okay,
the ripple effect of like.
So let's have policies be fair to people who are wealthy, and it's like, well, you're really giving money to wealthy, but you know that who more likely to be the wealthy.
No, you give money to people that are going to make the best use of it.
But
and the question is who. The question is who do the people in power think are going to make the best use of the money? And you know that Donald Trump thinks that the people that are rich are going to make the best use of the money.
Yeah, that's
probably I'm talking
about the argument of
buy another yacht.
Like if Herman Cain, if Herman Cain was one of the people that got $1 billion and he went and freaking opened another pizza chain,
Yeah, but he ran Godfathers into the ground. And then that's the thing about
that was shit pizza. He couldn't have saved it. He couldn't have saved it. That was shit pizza.
That's his argument. Elites and monarchs made against
like I'm a pizza guy and like he
Oh,
came in
I love
and took
pizza.
over.
No, Godfather's was awful.
He cut costs on everything, and
Wait,
he's
I
like,
kind of want to
"Oh,
hear
dude, this
Nivek's
fucking pepperoni tastes like shit."
Yeah, I'm trying hard. That's doctor's point is so right wing. The term right was those who are pro monarch, where they made the same argument of it being democracy,
that's not what I'm saying.
Of it being silly to take.
If we were talking about a Joe Biden policy, I would have said the opposite.
Acknowledge peasants and serfs
Doctor,
voting.
let Nivek go ahead and finish up your point. Like, come on, man. Like, make it concise though. Like,
he said I was pro monarchy, and no, that's not the case. I was making the point that you can expect the people in power.
Well, he wasn't saying you're pro monarchy. Is bringing up.
He did. He did say that.
No, well, he is bringing up that the right is pro monarchy because he's going to try to bring it back in another way. Because like that's what I'm saying. Like Nivek, just be concise in your point.
No, I'm just
take
saying
this
that
off on a tangent to come back to actually make.
I'm just saying that's okay. I'm just saying that's what people are talking with of it being silly of other people votes being counted in a democracy system, of it being absurd, of acknowledging other people where with doctor's argument of people would know better and do better. You know, it's that same type of mindset, you know, of in where he's coming across is all.
Now, I think you misunderstood what I was saying. What I was saying is that the policymakers at the time, being Donald Trump and his cabinet, thought that they were doing the best by distributing the money to the people who would do the best with the money. I'm not saying that I agree with them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to explain to you the decision-making process. Now, if Joe Biden was the decision maker, he would also distribute the money to the people who he thinks could do the most good with the money. And that would be China and Ukraine.
So that's when you go off the rails, Doctor.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, no. That was a tongue-in-cheek comment. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But
okay, I thought you thought that way.
But do you see what I'm saying?
It sounds like you thought that way. Like a person, they don't really have.
No, I'm trying to explain you. I understand the decision-making process and who makes it and how it's made, and I'm trying to explain to you how the decision is made, and how the person who made the decision so that it seems rational to you, at least, so that it at least seems rational to you, and not just ridiculous. Like, Donald Trump is a billionaire. He thinks that the smartest people are the guys that are the ones in charge of big business.
So it's pro-monopoly.
If he gives money to big business, they're going to go and invest in it and do the best things for society that they can. That's what Donald Trump thinks, in my opinion. Now, if you talk about
that's
I'm somewhere in the middle.
You don't think so you're like propping up. It's like propping up monopoly. I
think analyze both sides, and I'm trying to explain to you what Donald Trump is thinking.
When I'm like Nivek, listen to what Doctor is saying. He's telling you, here is the way that you can attack my argument. So he's being 100% honest and open, and saying, like, if you want to attack my argument, here's how you can attack my. Because he's being completely honest with you where he's from, right? So I would say don't go off any sort of other tangents.
Yeah, he's talking about
what he's saying.
A person just holding power in being. So you don't have somebody have a better idea to move upward and give to society who's superior to that person. You know what I mean? You squash that person is what he's saying.
Let me jump in here and add race back into the mix and make the common point that there are races that are richer than white people on average in America. So by doing this argument that Trump's rationale is that you should give money to rich people because they would know what to do with the money, Trump would be happy giving money to Nigerians and East Indians, right? And so when people make the historical argument of the blacks have been suppressed in the past, what they often will go to next is that we need to radically restructure the system. I don't think that's where you should go with that argument, because the system seems to be working for other people who are colored, and so maybe there's characteristics of those colored people who are poor, and there are historical impacts that if we address those, they would be able to succeed in the same fashion as other colored people.
The ideology of inequality, it doesn't just stay in race. You know, it's it could be supremacy on along different lines, because I mean it's wealthy
Right. So there are
wealthy blacks sold blacks. You get what I'm saying? That doesn't mean
yes.
that people who colluded
Well,
with them weren't
I don't
weren't
think
racist. You know what I'm
they
saying?
didn't sell them out. I mean, some of them did. You can make that case, but
So
if you're
like Snoop Dogg sold black people.
if you're a rich black person, that doesn't automatically mean that you sold your race out.
No,
It
I'm
could
saying
mean that.
with slavery, the wealthy, I don't know, kings, black kings. I don't know what they were exactly,
Right.
but
So
they
Puff Daddy, like Puff Daddy.
I'm sort of interested in Ivek. Why do you like whenever we talk about these things, you always seem to go back to a time period that's like the 1600s. It's like from like 1599 to like 1699. That's the entire time frame that you sort of base all your understanding from. It's this idea of feudalism, the way slavery was at that point. Why do you never look back previous to that time when things might have been different, or more to a current time when things are different? So why does it always come back to that one specific time frame when, yeah, of course, shit
the
was
whole time I wasn't
it was
talking
shit
about
was
that.
real
I was
fucked up.
talking majority for hours about something else, and I
Oh no,
just brought it up just right now, and now you're saying I've been ranting about it the whole time. Like I
that's
don't
not
get it.
not what I'm saying at all, my man. I'm
I
not
know
saying
I've
you're
mentioned
ranting
it in
about
the.
it at all.
I've been trying my best to tiptoe around it too. By the way,
That's what I'm saying. I'm just that's what I'm saying. I'm just curious about it. Like what is it about that specific time frame that is so salient to you that you always seem to come back to it?
I
Like
I just think the ideological mindset of what was before it kind of transitioned into something else, and I see I just
into
see a
what it is
relation.
now.
That's all.
Right.
Oh
So
yeah,
I have a
yeah.
question about
That's
that.
fair.
I have a
Okay,
question.
you wanted my inner workings of my mind
Yeah,
here.
okay, dude. I wasn't. I
I'm being
really
frank
wasn't
with you.
trying to bust your balls. I was like, I was
Okay.
asking you like a real honest question.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
So I have a question about that. You called it the ideology of inequality. Can you tell me what the ideology of inequality is? Concisely, if you can.
Well, it's of a supremacy mindset of a superior and an inferior, and it changed places throughout time.
Okay,
So I'm saying it's a mindset that I'm attacking, and I
right.
don't identify race, and it's hard to talk with other people because a lot of people take identity in race, and they're thinking that I think that way, and they're thinking I think that way because they think that way. They're projecting their thinking, and I'm saying I don't think along that line. That's how come when I was talking about the Civil War, I wasn't thinking about blacks, because that ideological mindset of what America had a revolution for, which was all men are created equal. That the direction that America would go was being fought on blacks. They were just a football. That was a fight that was within society that was that was fought against for centuries, and that's why people were rooting for America. People rooting for America was a changing of the past. You get what I'm saying? And America would have been an example that would have caught to the world and of a different frame of thinking, because people voting, you know what I mean, and having say, that who are peasants and serfs, you know what I'm saying, and the argument that was made at them of that be like that something like that is just ridiculous, so it it's just the mind, it's just the mindset, and what was of the past, when people revolted over against feudalism, you had that same type of thing transfer over into race, to preserve that way of thinking. It
Okay,
was so
so
so but
now,
really it was that fight. Blacks had nothing to do with that fight. That fight's been
yeah,
going on for centuries before race.
Hey,
yeah.
y'all,
So,
I gotta head out. Y'all have a great night.
all right, you too. See ya.
See you, mate. See you.
Um, so I'd like to try and tie that back into what I was
Yeah.
saying about
So I'm having
other,
that's the conversation I'm really having. I'm not really
but
talking about this. People think I am, but I'm not.
oh yeah, I agree. So I was talking about races which have a higher, uh, who are in a higher income bracket. So, what about me talking about that prompted you to think of this, this mindset that superior people have towards their inferiors? Like, what about what I was saying triggered that?
No, I mean, I believe the doctor mentioned that other groups that aren't white were
Yeah,
were benefiting, were, they're doing good, and they're benefiting in policies,
yeah,
and I said, well, you know that type of mindset of the ideology of equality versus inequality, of supremacy. You had people who were within the same group thought that way within black groups, and white
yeah.
groups
Okay,
collaborated together to sell blacks as slaves. And I'm saying that type of mindset.
okay,
Let me finish. Let
yes,
me finish. That type of
and that's
mindset.
fine.
That type of mindset screwed black people,
Yeah,
and it screwed white people. So,
and that's
you know,
fine.
okay,
There were black people who sold other black people into slavery. It's
yeah,
fine.
and there were whites
That's
that
not
oppressed
no
white
that's
people.
not. I'm not addressing that at all. All I'm saying is that under this current system, this capitalist democratic system,
Uh huh.
it is possible for, let's say, African Americans to succeed. Now, that has nothing to do with thinking that people who are unequal from me uh deserve something less than me. I'm just saying that they
Yeah,
can
yeah, I got you.
they
I
can
agree with
develop
you.
the skills to succeed. So what's wrong with that? And how does that like say anything about me selling black people into slavery?
I think
There,
you do come down to a really weird point though. So if you say okay, well there are a certain amount of people that they can succeed, but they're let's just say for sake of argument they're 50% of the population, but they only succeed 5% of the time. Yeah, I mean I think that's where the argumentation can start to come in, and that's where you're going to start to look. So I mean if your argument is that people are getting to that same position, to the same relative amount of their quote unquote race, which I think we all sort of agree is a sort of nonsensical thing. It doesn't determine intelligence or anything like that.
Yeah.
So we can all agree that that's the case. So what is the actual difference there? If we know that it's not intelligence, we know that it's not any innate capability. What is the difference? What is the difference there? Why is one group not presented to this amount that their population is in the normal population, right?
The environment
Right,
in which
and
they grow up.
yeah, well,
would be
right, the
answer.
environment that they grew up, which is determined by their parents. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm going to interrupt you.
Oh, no,
I'm going to interrupt too.
perfect. Yeah, perfect.
So if you have a K-selected population, which means that people's reproductive strategy is to have relatively few children, and invest a lot more energy in ensuring that those children are successful.
Exactly.
And then you have another population which is R selected, which means they have a relatively higher number of children and invest more energy in having children, but invest less energy in ensuring that those children are successful.
Exactly.
The environment that the R selected people are raised in will not ensure their success, and they are less. Each of the individuals is less likely to be successful in whatever endeavor we're measuring, and the K selected individuals will be more rare, and they will each individually be more likely to succeed. So the success of one, call it race, as a proportion of the population, is more a function of whether that race is K selected versus R selected than it is a function of whether the society itself is biased.
Yep. And that doesn't even necessarily have anything to do with race, because there's poor white people, there's poor black people, there's rich white people, there's rich black people. I mean, there is a difference there, right?
Yeah, but there's no poor Rockefeller.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess
but you have people who vote against their interests along lines of bigotry.
Like one insight I just have here is that like people on the right always go on about how black people need to change their culture, and then in other times they'll go on about how we need to not use race as a category. And so I just had the insight of we shouldn't be saying black people need to change their culture. We should be saying that people who grow up in communities that have a high fatherless rate, who have high gang violence.
But
they're trying to change their culture by being bigoted no matter their culture.
Because there are white communities, there's a less of them, but there are white communities who have the same problem as black communities.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be using the category of race to describe.
They don't care about the problem. They vote along with race.
Well, we shouldn't even be using the same description of success.
Exactly. Well, like when you say culture, can you imagine like today currently today, United States, somebody being like, "Oh, there's something wrong with black culture, and that means this, that, and the other about them," but they listen to rock and roll all day long, right? It's like, do you understand the incongruence of what you're fucking talking about?
Right, like I don't like P. Diddy's music, right? But I'm sufficiently unbiased to say that
what the
that
heck
man
is black
a success.
culture anyway?
They
don't even have no connection with their past.
That man is a success. Now,
their slang is southern. They don't even they have
rock and roll and jazz are 100% art forms that came from slave culture. 100%. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is 100%.
Rock and roll came from blues, which came from jazz, which came from.
Yep, exactly.
It
is 100. It is 100%. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Well,
And
it
so
reminds me,
if you
This is the rhythm of the night.
well, you guys have ever seen History of the World where he hits the guy on the foot with a rock and then just covers his mouth and boom?
and so if you want to
It's
learn
the first
about
song
black
ever written.
culture, try some Miles Davis. I think
Hey,
you'll
hey,
enjoy it.
Oh, Miles Davis.
hey, is blues part of the critical race theory by any chance? I think we've uncovered something here.
Yeah,
Dude,
found
Richard. Richard, you need to listen to some Jelly Roll Morton, my man.
Listen to some Honey Boy Edwards. Anyways, guys, it's Tav time. Thank you guys for engaging. Let's go relax in the Tav.
Good conversation.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Travis, for affording us this opportunity to discuss serfdom again. Thank you.
Yeah. You know what? I'm changing the brand name from Pangburn to Surfburn or Surfdom Burn.
Surfburn?
Where serfdom, or no, Pangburn, where serfdom lives. Where serfdom lives on.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right. Bye.
All right, dudes. See you in
Where
the
the
Tav.
fight against serfdom lives on.
Thanks to
classical race serfdom.
Thanks to Brendan and Nicholas Norden for going at it, and Fish Jungle in the chat. Thank you guys. I really enjoyed your discourse. And we'll catch you next time. Let art and science inspire.